Hey, this is Ghost on the Ox. We've been talking, and I didn't do an intro. This is the intro.
Our iconic cold open.
15 minutes in.
Talking about absolutely nothing of importance to the actual topic of the podcast.
Some of it's important.
Vaguely.
We started to segue into Lili here. I'm Devin. This is Trey. This is our special guest, Lili.
Yay.
I guess I want you to set the mood, set the tone for like the conversation we're going to get into. Give us just the audience, we kind of know a little bit, but give our audience a little explanation of why you're talking with us today.
I am talking to you guys because really I met you guys through music, and I feel like that's probably what we're going to end up talking about a little bit today. Yeah, and I don't know. Music, art, reading.
Yeah, because you've been really active in the scene, like starting to get into the production side of things.
Yeah, right? I really like live music performances, and I know a lot of people who are extremely talented, and I've really been enjoying finding ways to bring people together and just like create the setting for people to do their thing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I like it, and it's really nice to see how people feel when they're in that moment, and like the feedback that I get from the musicians and from the other people outside of it really makes you feel good. It's like it's so rewarding.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's what kept us doing the open mic for as long as we did. It's just the love of the game that comes with the satisfaction of knowing that you're really out there providing a space for the culture to kind of like do its thing.
Yeah.
Which is why
Speaking of providing a space, thank you to Nicole for letting us use the set here, the garage studio set. Moving on.
I'm the narrator on wherever. That's your jurisdiction.
There will be links, maybe.
Yeah. Here, there will be a link.
Maybe. Well, maybe. I
Better editor, Devin. What are we paying you for? Anyway.
Not much.
Whatever the Patreon subs are paying.
It's about $3.
Hey.
Worth it.
Yeah.
So we met initially at, was it Kava Cat or was it Chill
The Chill Room? It was at the Chill Room, yeah.
I could have sworn we met at Hava Kava.
Maybe. I was journeying around, but I was very, very shy at the time, and I was not going to talk to anybody unless,
especially us freaks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and I remember that because I remember distinctly you were one of those acts that, like, not to downplay it or anything, but one of the things I would see all the time at open mics are the people that go up there looking like they're about to give the worst performance of their entire life. Like they're like knees weak, spaghetti on the shirt already, like type. Yeah. And then they give like a performance that brings a tear to my eye. Genuinely. And I remember you being one of those. Didn't quite bring a tear to my eye. Most of them didn't. That was just for dramatic effect. But like I remember being very like impressed. And it's like, and so it's good. That's another reason why it's like it's cool to see you like have actually ran with that from there.
I think it was really people like you guys. Like I remember you were always so open to me and like what I was doing, and like you said, like I was like knees were knocking. I was scared, like genuinely scared. And it's through other musicians and producers and just people that make things that encouraged me, and I'm glad that they did, because now I feel like I'm one of them. I feel like I'm one of the people that makes shit happen, and like it's been like 2 years since then.
Isn't that, can I comment on that feeling you just expressed right there for a second? Isn't that a strange place to be in where you well, at least I don't want to speak for you, but I simultaneously feel like gotten to that point where I'm doing stuff, but I still want to do more. So my perspective has shifted to feel like I'm not doing stuff yet.
Yeah.
Even though I am. You know what I mean?
Well, it's because
I'm doing a lot more than I was a couple of years ago.
Well, that's referred to as getting lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
Like for all intents and purposes, that is what that is. It's like where you're too like caught up in whatever it is that you're doing that you can't see the forest for the trees. It's just one green, like one stressful green blob.
Well, then there's also some people in our circles, in our scene, that like almost have this aura of like local celebrity, local status. And then when you achieve or like get to a similar level as them, you realize it actually ain't shit at all, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is because like
it is, but it also isn't.
I feel well. It depends on how you look at it, right? Because this is something that I definitely grew to appreciate in my time pursuing the same exact thing for the same reasons as you are. But like it's the perspective of being able to differentiate the internet from real life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like the big thing, and I think that that's where a lot of these types of efforts kind of get lost in the noise, but
I think what I really
underappreciated. But like once doing things, because a lot of my efforts were focused, like I never posted the social media and still never do. And most of what I was doing, most of the moving and shaking and talking that I was doing around when I was still doing that stuff was in person, almost entirely outside of what was going on in the disco.
I think I want to clarify what I meant. What I meant really was more along the lines of when you would get to this similar like level as those other people that are like kind of celebrity-ish status, you realize that there's nothing different. You're still just people.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, it's
but you know, you get what I'm saying though. They're still just people, but they're just doing things.
Yeah, well, I mean,
they're just doing creative things and having some level of competency and success at it, but they're still just a person.
Yeah, but it's still warrants.
There's nothing that crazy. Like technically speaking, anybody could do that if they just put their time into it.
Yeah, you glorify the things that you admire. You know, you don't just admire them; you put them on a pedestal. And I feel like the average person doesn't glorify themselves.
Yes.
You know, so once you achieve,
that's kind of what I'm getting. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, once you achieve the status of what you once glorified and you're not glorifying yourself while you're in it, you're like, damn, you know, for me, once like I never saw myself as a person that would ever do karaoke in public. And then when I did karaoke, it's like, okay, well, this is mid kind of. What else can I do? Let's bring some like musicians and make that happen. And like that was another big step. That it's like, holy shit, I can't believe that I just did that, but I did it. So now what? You know, and then you start organizing things, and now I'm like, what else can I do? You know, like if I did it, then I got to do something else.
Real.
That momentum is like very addicting.
Yeah,
for sure. And I remember like beyond like that first performance when you first clicked in with the jazz band as well with Caleb and
Ian,
and all of them. Like that was like a whole new, because I feel like that's really where you like plugged in proper for like how you perform.
It felt like there that came in two stages. So I would do jazz standards with them. And when I was in high school, I grew up on freestyling. You know, like you get high, you sit on the curb with your friends, and you just freestyle for an hour or two. And I realized that I could do that with live music, with people that are playing, you know, different genres. It's not hip hop, it's not Lil Peep, but you can still freestyle over that. And now when I perform in public, that's pretty much exclusively what I do. And I feel like that like unlocked like everything that needed, like that was like the final confidence boost that I needed, that you can just do shit off the dome and it'll be okay, you know. It doesn't need to be anything else.
Absolutely, especially for an audience that's there to see people, you know, doing that. You know, nobody's there to see like a super professional act. And if anybody can, the fact that you're up there freestyling, because I always thought like at first, until I was really paying attention, that you were just kind of like mumbling or saying whatever, and then I started paying attention. I was like, oh, she's actually saying lyrics, like in freestyle, and that makes so much more sense now that you actually had freestyle practice growing up. That puts things into so much more context.
Yeah, it was.
You grew up on these streets rapping.
It was.
She didn't say no.
Well, she did also just say yes previously.
Yeah.
Like that's just like
Thanks, Trey.
how it was, you know. Like I went to a high school in Fort Pierce, and it was
I'll do it.
Yep.
Go on.
It was Fort Pierce Central, and I went from being this homeschooled nerdy kid, and I'll be the first person to say it.
Man.
I needed to be accepted. I wanted nothing else. And so, you know, the stoners, they will accept you.
Y'all can't hear it, but there's an air horn there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The stoners will accept you. They will.
Central brass section.
They will do that. And, you know, that's what they did, you know. And I started meeting, they're like, oh, you know, we're going to bring so-and-so. Actually, one of the events that I want to do next is a cipher. I would love to have a cipher. I think that would be awesome.
What constitutes a cipher? Like, what distinguishes it from other things?
somebody
Um,
playing beats and then a pool of rappers, hopping in on that said beat.
yeah.
Okay.
You go back and forth. You usually have a good group. You're like playing off of each other.
Lyrical jazz.
Yeah. It's awesome, and I really think that would be a lot of fun.
Hell
That
yeah.
would be. That was one of the things I was
Let me
thinking of.
film
Like,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you know. I have.
We'll post up at the the parking garage for
Yeah.
peers.
And Lord knows there's tons of incredible like rapping talent that aren't even like active
Oh, yeah.
around here. Like all the rappers that we'd have the open mics, well, all of them, but like usually the tail end, the like 4 like really good rappers that would pop in every so often, like at the tail end of the night.
Claros?
That's the
Yep.
guy who came to mind. Shout out
Claros.
Claros at MC.
Is it Claros
Zoa-
or Claros?
I assume it's Claros came to mind because you just said it. I always pronounce it Claros in my head.
I don't remember.
Either way, Zoe out here hustling. I see you. Mad respect. Keep it up because you're very much getting better. He's the obvious one. Thinking of Noah is another one.
Noah.
Yeah.
Huge sleeper hit.
Nick, who plays bass, is a pretty good freestyler too.
Oh.
Nick, I don't know. He plays the
Oh
bass.
yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah, and he freestyles as
Mhm.
well. He's producing.
about. Brick Nuno.
Yes.
Nick Bruno.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah.
Another one.
Shout out Nick.
Yeah, he was at the jazz night recently, right?
Yeah. He played bass. He played guitar, I think.
I don't know he like freestyle. I've heard him rap plenty
yeah.
of times. I never knew he freestyle stuff.
Yeah, we've started doing it more often.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's another one I'm really happy to see like out there
Branching
like,
out,
really
out
doing
of
more
the shell
stuff.
a little bit. Yeah.
Mhm.
He impresses me with his beats and stuff, actually.
Yeah, very versatile musician.
Well, because I actually had a session with him, just me and him hanging out at his place. Because I brought my S1 synth over, and we were gonna and he was showing me just beats that he was working on, various different things, and he is really good at the like.
he knows what's catchy.
He knows what's catchy.
He knows
but
what's
with
catchy.
on the beat aspect of it, he's really good with simplicity,
Yes. Yeah.
which is one of those things that like people kind of overcomplicate
Mhm.
beats to try to make them unique or whatever. But he just finds really good samples and chops them and spices them, makes a really good simple beat that is catchy, is good, fits the vibe of what he's trying to convey. He's really good at that.
Well, that's the important part for beat makers like that is often they are
And he's
making the
humble
beats.
about it because he doesn't realize how good his stuff is.
Very true.
For real.
Yeah, not to gas you up. Don't get too full of yourselves because I said nice things about you, guy.
Some beans out of there.
Yeah, yeah. But wait, what? Oh yeah.
Don't get too
No,
gassed
you're
up.
right. You're right. You're right.
That's crazy.
But dang, that just stun locked my brain. What was I about to say?
Simplicity.
Oh yeah. Next topic. I forgot. I completely forgot. Yeah, no, that tangent like completely set me off. It happens.
We were gassing him up because I was saying it's
Before
he doesn't realize like how good his beats are, and they're simplistic, simplistic
right,
in a
that's what I was gonna say.
in a
Yeah.
positive way. They're not overcomplicated, trying to be something they don't need to be.
Because something that I run into every time that I attempt to make beats, I always have the issue of getting to a point where I'm happy with it, but I feel like I need to do more necessarily because when you're making a good beat, you got to leave that space for the vocal.
Yeah.
But then it never feels finished. And it always, and more often than not, I'll be working on it until I have something that's way too maximalist for
That
anybody
goes
other than
back
like somebody who's
to-
screaming.
That goes back to a point that I made a while back where in rap, at least specifically, the vocal is the main instrument.
The
Oh yeah,
rhythm.
yeah,
It is the
absolutely.
main instrument in
Absolutely.
the song. Like
Mhm.
there are very few to none like rap or hip hop or even like maybe even R&B songs that I would listen to sans vocals. Like I can't think of a single one off the top of my head that I would listen to without the vocals, and like I would actively seek it out to listen to it. Like that's what I'm listening to it for mainly. You know?
Fair enough. Yeah. Have you seen Campbell around recently? That's
No.
another guy, another one around here who's
Oh,
yeah, highly, yeah, tall dude.
When I
Yeah.
start organizing it, I'll probably ask you guys if you can recommend people because some of them I do not have their information.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I'd be more than willing to point you in the right direction.
Noah would go crazy.
Hmm.
Mm.
I feel like I do.
Iran?
Yeah, that would.
That'd be an insane collab. Will it be
Collab?
Iran? Collab? collab?
Between who?
Lili, Ron?
Well, like on a track?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like have you on a hook or something? Yeah. No,
Or
definitely.
the cipher
True.
yeah.
Yeah.
idea. But
well,
particularly a track.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the freestyle does lend itself, especially in a cipher, like that lends itself to just being like an improv like
Shout out
hook
Lord King.
machine too. Like,
Mm.
that's interesting to think of in that context. Is that what you would plan to do? Like, are you planning like take part in it?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I got to get myself in there a little bit, but I don't know. I have to think about it still how I want to organize it. I have a rock event organized for May, and I would
Ooh.
like to do another jazz event sometime between now and May, but I haven't talked to any places about booking it. And then over the summer, do a cipher and another event that I haven't decided yet.
What's around PSL right now besides like Kava Cat that's hosting anything like worth being at?
Well, today the Fort Pierce Jazz and Blues Society have a thing going on.
Yeah, I saw that.
My friends from Jacksonville are playing there right now.
Nice.
I don't know. It's kind of a slow season. I feel like Kava Me Crazy has a flow state, but that's every 3 months. My events are usually every 3 months.
Yeah.
Secondary question to this: what got you to like start wanting to plan out events and host them and organize them, and how long were you kind of working on things before it actually happened?
The inspiration for it was that I would see events that other people would do and be like, that's really, really cool. And then I'd go home and at the end I'd be like, but like I still I have like this built up energy that it's like I don't know. One of the things I want to be a hallmark of my events is that at the end it's an open jam so anybody can collaborate. Because every time that I'd see a band or a group go and play and it'd be awesome, but at the end of it I would feel like, oh, I want to get up there so bad. Like let me work with you guys. That was awesome. And so by organizing my own events, I can choose who I want to listen to, and I can also find ways to have not only myself but everybody else that was in the audience and felt the same way to join in and just jam and just make music and turn it into like a proper networking thing instead of just for the people on the stage. I want it to be interactive. I want it to be for the people who are in the audience to be able to work and help create the event as well.
Right.
And
You know what I never now that you brought up the word networking, well, you know what I just came to mind that I don't think I've ever seen, or at least locally, is an event that is both a music event but also pushing the networking aspect of it.
So
Like encouraging people to shake hands and meet each other and like explore different things and whatever.
one of the things that was awesome about the jazz event that I did is that I had semi-organized jams at the end. So we had a group go on. We had the DJ play for a little bit while we got the next person set up. And then they were set up with like the house instruments. So at the end, I was walking around. And I'm like, "Do you want to be in the jam? Yes, no." And then I would organize who would be in the jam. It's
That's
not
cool.
like an open mic where you have a list and
It's
it's
a
one
curated
person at a
jam.
time. Yes, so I would put people in, like there was this lovely man, Richard. He's an older guy, he plays drums, phenomenal. And he was new to the thing. I'd met him separately and I wanted to put him in with some people that are good. So I'm like, who plays his kind of music? Who would he get along with outside of, this single performance? And, there was this kid, he'd been playing trumpet for like 3 years, but he'd never performed in public before. And, I throw him in there, like people's styles, what they like to play, and you just sort out how you want them to be in there. And, like they're introducing themselves afterwards, good jam, dude, they're shaking hands and talking and stuff. And like, that's what I mean is when I see a lot of musical performances, they're very much so categorized into audience and performer, and I really like blending those elements, and I want it to be much more gray area because like I said, every time I see something I want to be part of it. I want to dive into it, and
I gotta
convention
say,
says no.
that's always been like one of my favorite things about the DJ scene is how like 90% of the people going to those shows are also DJs.
Yeah.
And so they're all having that like that real like technical appreciation for what's going up there that you don't really get like for a lot of other music artists.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean,
So
like going to some of the open mics, yours was pretty good about having people that would actually listen, but sometimes it's like you cannot fault them for it, but they're like in their own thing, you know. And sometimes when you're performing, you want somebody to see you. You want to be heard. You want to be seen.
Mhm.
And when you go to open mics where it is predominantly other musicians, like you guys, or John Sills now has his open mics where
Shout
it's
out John Sills.
very, very
Shout out John
musician
Sills.
based. You feel like you're, you know, being appreciated. And at his open mics, you know, people will pick up a shaker, they'll hop on this little drum thing that he has, and like they will become part of it too. And like I really, really like that immersion, you know, that it's nice.
Where's like the line though? Because
Um,
I almost like, I don't know if you could even have enough instruments for this to become a problem, but I imagine like at some point, if the entire crowd is participating, it just becomes a
the
cacophony.
the way that I organized it, you asked me how long it took me to kind of set up
Yeah.
the last event. I'd been planning it for about a month between the gear and the people that I, you know, needed to be there, because like you can guess who will show up, but there you need core members of the different bands that are going. You need them to be
Absolutely.
there. And while I was drawing this up, I made it very clear to everybody that I for sure wanted to participate. That if anybody had a question about joining, that they needed to come talk to me. You know, I was not going to turn them away, and I left plenty of space at the end for the coordinated jams. But I wanted to make sure, you know, I am deciding who is going to be playing with who. You know, and like there has to be structure, there has to be boundaries, and one of the things that's been good about, you know, changing from that very shy person who I am now is that I have no problem with telling people like, hey, we don't have the time for that, or we don't have enough inputs in the thing for that, or you know, we only have one
Don't
guitar.
get me started on not
Yeah,
enough
no,
inputs. Oh, I
that's
can.
conditioned into you fast when you're
Yeah.
on the production end of things,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh my god.
You know, like
Especially when you're running an open mic. Like,
it.
No, I'm not miking your amp in this tiny room.
I'm yeah, no, I mean, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, you know, like it.
Learning to become a little bit like assertive.
Yeah, and I see a lot of musicians kind of have problems with boundaries, or I should say artists. You know, I think because you want to give so much of your art to other people that they start to take things from you that are not just art.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really important when you want to create something that's long lasting that you have the division, you know. So there's no line between musician and performer, audience, but they have to converge somewhere. And when I'm organizing the events, I want that to be me, so then I can decide how they split off from that point, you know.
Fair
Like
enough.
it works. It works, and everybody had a good time. It was a success. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an awesome feeling when everything comes together.
Yeah.
Well, speaking on convergence, on a similar note, like that's how you would approach that, you know, that difference on your productions, but internally, like where do you see yourself really converging towards when it comes to being a performer versus like a show producer, a showrunner? Like how do you like what kind of like calls to you more? Because you started out performing and then this kind of called to you, but like
Um, I think that I satisfy the performance side of me enough going to open mics or maybe doing gigs with like one or two other people. But I don't feel like it would be very good optics wise for me to perform too much at the events that I run. You know what I
well,
mean?
yeah, no, that definitely
Yeah.
makes sense.
Makes
So
sense.
Hmm.
I mean,
like they're two separate categories for me, you know.
I could see it.
Right on.
I could see it going two different ways though, because at the same time, I agree with what you're saying. Like, you don't want to kind of hog the spotlight that you're
Yeah.
trying to give to other people, but at the same time, if you have like a certain level of, I hate to use the word, but a certain level of clout, a certain level of like people recognize you and what you do and appreciate and want to see you being part of it might be a draw for a lot of people to
Yeah.
come out to it.
Also, I think there's something to be said about nobody holding it against you for standing on your own platform.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I did perform at the jazz event. I did a couple standards. But like at the same time, I think a lot of these people, like I genuinely consider them friends, and I think, you know, that's one of the things about 404 Sound Not Found is that it's not necessarily a collective, you know,
Mhm.
it's more
your
so
thing.
it's more so mutual aid, I guess. You know, it's helping people do what they want, and in return they'll help you do what you want, you know. So because they're my friends, if I have an event, I do trust that they will come out and support me, you know, regardless if I'm singing or not, you know. And like that's also equally valuable. I think it's like a mutual respect kind of situation. Like I'm not I want to perform a little bit at all the events that I do, but like no more than anybody else. If
Mm,
I'd hold a concert for myself if I wanted.
true. Yeah.
Fair enough, yeah. And it's kind of what you gotta do around here. But I mean, it's cool to see that like that spirit of mutual aid. And we kind of touched on this like briefly before the podcast, but it's been really interesting and like uh, honestly like what's the word I'm looking for? Refreshing to see that. Probably not the right word, but close enough to see that kind of void get filled in again. After things kind of like fell off and categorized for like a little
We
bit.
went into a brief dark age.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like to however
It was
dark
like
it was.
like
However dark it was, there
it
were
was
still
like
people.
18 months of dark age.
Yeah, but there were still people like out there doing things. Like
Yeah.
it was more of a dark age to like me specifically because I like moved
I feel
fucking
like
an hour south.
I don't feel
but,
like it was just you. I don't feel like it was just you.
well, I mean,
I feel like it was a mini dark period for.
yeah, I felt it too, but
lot
I
of
just
people.
chalked it up to mostly me being like too far away to like really keep a pulse on things.
Yeah.
But in any event, I've definitely noticed it in contrast to what you and like Caleb got going on now,
Yeah.
and Pete, and everybody else who's like out there like really doing it and doing it with that spirit of like mutual aid and mutual assistance and
Yeah.
wanting to and the monkey together strong mentality, that I've always been proselytizing for.
I feel like in troubling times, the people work together. One of the goals that I have for this mutual aid thing that I really want to start working on is helping other people find gigs.
Ooh,
And I think that, it's important.
agent.
Well, it's mutual aid, so it's not just myself, but it's all the people that are really involved in it would also be helping. Like I've had some people, come up and tell me, don't go to that restaurant because they're not going to pay you. They're not going to pay you as much as they said they would, or they're too late with their money. They don't pay you on time. So it's not just a matter of knowing where you can perform, but it's also who you should perform for. you know, it's like people talk about open mics. Oh, that open mic sucks, or this one, people get really into it, or, people have their favorites. And it's like all of that information, when it's combined, can be useful to someone,
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. Especially in somewhere as precarious to operate in as St. Lucie, because like that's always the biggest.
Oh.
That was the biggest issue that I feel like I noticed when I was there was like everybody there wants to do stuff except for the people that provide the spaces for things to be done in.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
everybody, like the people that provide the spaces for the artists to like actually do stuff,
make it
either
so
only let it,
difficult.
yeah, they make it so difficult or make it so unrewarding, or they don't allow it at all because it scares them.
And
Or, you
and
know.
actually, what you didn't go all the way, but what I would go like the next. I don't know what I'm saying. The next thing I would say to add to what you're saying is that information is extremely useful in this area because, well, kind of combining your 2 points, I guess. But some like places are very like pro one type of genre and anti another. And so like finding the right place for the right person
Yeah.
Mhm.
is extremely important.
Yeah.
Because like there's some open mics or some places where they're like, nobody's going to be receptive to this type of music because that's just not what they're into.
Mhm.
And they collected in this area because they were catering to a certain type of thing. And so this other kind of sound kind of got left behind. But there's other places where that sound is more embraced.
Yeah, and
So
there's also places that pretty much only want artists, like they are extremely open to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like there's that you will not know that unless you happen to know the right string of
Yeah.
people.
yeah,
It's 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 valuable, and like I said, in dark times or incoming dark times, I think it's really good to start building that network now. I mean, the first industry to go down will always be the entertainment industry, and the only people that keeps the entertainment industry afloat are the audience, right? So if God forbid, my favorite open mic person is getting paid based on the amount of people that are coming, and people are like, okay, I don't want to spend $10 on a kava today because I'm like running low on funds. They're not going to show up to the open mic, and then he doesn't get paid, and then that's an entertainer that's out of a gig.
mhm.
But if I can, create different ways, like if I can, like it's
Create more
it's other
opportunities.
people
Yeah.
coming that give you the things, like if it's somebody's first gig, I'm going to show up to it because I want as many
a
people there
symbiotic
as possible.
relationship.
Yes, exactly. It's mutual aid.
Yeah.
And
The artist can't thrive without an audience, and the audience has nowhere to go if there's not a thing to support,
yeah.
a thing to watch, a thing to listen to, a thing to play, a thing to read, a thing to whatever.
And like artists, like generalization, but artists generally cope by seeking out other people. You know, like I don't. There's like some isolated artists, you know, stereotypes going on, but I've never encountered that in real life. Every artist that I know, if they're not extroverted, at least like being peripheral to people.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that can be definitely used to your advantage. But if you're not someone that has like the get up and go, like let's go somewhere and make something happen, you know, at least being able to provide your support by sitting down and like working on your own thing there, like that's
How
enough.
have you experienced, because one of you kind of touching on the topic, one of my kind of gripes with some creatives is they're very talented, but then they kind of almost can't muster like the effort to like get out to actually do a thing.
Yeah.
How do you, have you run into that with any of your events, or have you found a way to kind of like motivate or to like kind of push those people in the right direction?
I used to be one of those people, and I think I just needed to see somebody else do it so that I could know that it was achievable. You know,
Mm.
I mean, the concept of a role model is not overrated. As much as it's talked about, it's underrated because it goes past everybody's mind. And I think being able to see someone that has a regular life, I have a normalized life, I have my friends and my stupid downtime and, you know, my chaos, but I have done X, Y, and Z, and I see some of my friends kind of going with me in that direction. And you know, I like the idea of a string of people. You know, it's a string of people, and you're all connected to each other. And it's like the never-ending turtles. You
Mhm.
know,
Throws all the way down. Yeah.
it's just like you follow the person in front of you, and if you got to break off, you can do that.
And keep the spirit alive.
Yeah,
Keep the fire lit. That's real.
I think role models is the way.
And I think it also speaks to like what we were getting at before I left for my pee break. But the fact that there are so few places out there that like make it worth it to
Yeah.
people that aren't out there purely for the love of the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because there is like so little incentive, both culturally and financially, you know, to go out there and try and do that stuff because nobody's out there really asking for it until you do it and show them that that's what they want.
Yeah,
Mhm.
You know, and I think that what you're doing, especially with the jazz end of things, is a huge thing because I feel like that is an incredibly undertapped market, like genre wise around here.
especially when it's young people doing it.
Yeah,
You know, like
exactly.
you'll see if you go to like a restaurant on Hutchinson Island or something, you'll see a couple of guys.
You gotta stay a little
Sorry.
closer on the mic.
You'll see a couple of guys playing jazz. But the difference between when they do it, I feel like jazz is a young person's music. It doesn't matter what age it started, it is a young person's music. And like at the jazz thing, like we had people like dancing and you know screaming and shit. Like you're having a good time with it. And I feel like instead of like removing it from the stereotype of it being something that is enjoyed only by people who are older and showing that you can get down to jazz, you can like feel it is important, you know, like it's infectious.
And that
You know,
might actually be the cultural through line that like this area like really needs to draw that intergenerational gap that I think it really lies at the core of like all these issues that we were talking about. It's like all the business owners and all the people of that generation that would be are completely disconnected from the people at the grassroots that are really like trying to build the culture up and their needs and what they would want to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and so kind of yeah, I was saying.
No, that through line, that connection is very needed around
Because I can see
here.
because in hindsight, you know, I'm thinking about running shows, but I'm, you know, was trying to run like weird, like not necessarily exclusively like DJ events as such. You know, because I wasn't a DJ. But like,
You're a blinky button boy.
yeah, I'm a blinky button box boy.
Yeah.
It's a completely different crowd. but but no, it is like a different vibe. Um, and like it's not a vibe that everybody wants all the time.
Right.
Whereas I feel like, you know, one of my biggest blunders was putting 2 electronic shows back to back, which was one of the Groovy promo shows, and then my second Moments in Time show, which like 5 people showed up for because it was the day after one of the biggest Groovy promo shows that we had put on the night before. But even at that, like, you know, there's not as much demand for that around here, and a showcase of local electronic music is not going to bring in
Shout out
nearly
Miguel,
as
by
much.
the way.
Yeah, big shout outs.
What's he been doing?
And Caleb.
I need to ask. I've been
I know.
meaning to ask you.
It's been a minute since I reached out to him.
Yeah.
But like, thinking about the kind of music that I would want to play, like ideally, especially at this point, like I want to lean, like I had my time putting on shows for the general population, doing my thing for the civilians. But like was an artist, coming into it. And so it's like having my thing now, and kind of like having done that and realizing where I want to be and all that, there really isn't anywhere that would want to listen to a fucking drone show or like an experimental electronic show that I can think of between Fort Pierce and Fort Lauderdale, besides Cavacat, and it's like that's the only place I can think of that would like do that, and they wouldn't pay me, which is fair enough. This is not much of a culture for it. But I would imagine anyway. All that to say is jazz.
Yeah.
Jazz is far more appealing to everybody, and like that, like intergenerationally. And I feel like you'll have a far easier time finding places that would host that, as well as finding people and places that would value like that music and actually be willing to support you. Which is kind of counterintuitive to what we were saying in our experience of having issues with businesses. I think that jazz would be like kind of the cure to that, or be a far easier sell.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many different types of jazz too that it can be turned into pretty much anything, like you can, I don't know, like if you have like an upbeat environment or a funky environment, like or slow kind of like dinner time environment, like it just works. It's so adaptable, I have faith.
Yeah, jazz is interesting because it's so kind of like it like kind of offshoots and becomes like branches off into so many other genres.
Oh, it comes into from how flexible
Yeah.
and ephemeral of a genre it is. It's a
Right.
genre predicated on how flexible and freeform everything is.
Yeah.
So you really can just make it into whatever you want. Which does lend itself to that for sure. But did you listen to jazz much, or were you like into jazz much before you started doing these shows?
Yeah, I probably started listening to jazz when I was 14. Like 14 to 18 was like huge. I was homeschooled, so I'm like I'm better than everybody else. I'm different.
Rightfully so.
I was also homeschooled, but not for that long.
Dude, I spent 4 months in a public school. 11 and a half years I was homeschooled.
For the record, I think us homeschooled people are better than everybody else.
Okay.
As somebody who went K through 12 through public school, you are.
Yeah, see,
I am a worse person for having my high school diploma. I mean that genuinely.
I was homeschooled just up until 3rd grade, and then I went to actual school. But I went to private school until high school. Then I went to normie school.
Yeah, going from private school to that, I can only imagine the culture shock of being homeschooled to going to Central. Oh my
Dude,
god!
I was
Yeah,
What
right.
the fuck was that like?
I had a few things to my advantage. I had the homeschool group got introduced to weed pretty young. I don't know how, but we did, and we made it. My mom worked, or both of my parents worked
bottom.
full-time jobs. I was like on the loose from a young age, so
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I was weird and deranged and pretty obnoxious sometimes. But weed was not new to me, and I had like this really weird balance of insecurity, but also way too much confidence at the same time. It was strange. So like going into public school, it's like, oh, weed doesn't impress me. Like I was like weird and cocky and deranged, and
Come back to me when you got that meth.
yeah.
Well, it's like, and you're not socializing with people for however many years. It's hard to know how to be when
Yeah.
you plug
Yeah.
yourself back in. I know that better than anybody.
And like I said, it was the bad kids that like kind of accepted me, because like I learned pretty quick, you can't do a lot of things that you do at home in school.
Yep.
But
There's no piss drawers at school.
no
Yes.
bitch drawers at school. But like like I made it work. I adapted and I calmed down a lot. and like it just worked. I was there for 4 months.
I
It
guess
was
it's not
just
too long to be,
What?
no.
Why were you only there for 4 months?
So the whole
Why didn't you just finish out the whole thing?
that was my finish out.
Oh, you had to.
The situation was that a lot of the classes that I received were not going to count towards the diploma.
Oh, okay.
So I was going to be 19 in high school, or I join now and I do double block of certain classes that I had and take IRSC classes, and then I can graduate on a like a speedy diploma. So I graduated with like 6 less credits than
This is what I also did.
Yep, I
I also did
graduated when
that.
I was 17. It was December. And I was the only person to walk at my graduation except for this girl who was pregnant. So this was during COVID, or the very beginning of COVID. So it was 2 people are allowed in. So it was my mom and my dad and me. And it was a bunch of different high schools combining it. So it was like, it was just weird. It was strange. I was not happy. I didn't want to go to public school. I did because I wanted friends. I wanted to be normal, but I also I was chilling. I'm home alone all the time. Nobody's
Yeah.
gonna tell me anything. And it really was. I knew that I was ignorant at the time, but to find out that I was going to be held back 2 years from school if I were to continue with a regular class progression was like hurtful. Like it was confirmation that I was as stupid as I thought I was, like as ignorant and uninformed.
Well, it's a humbling moment, I guess.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
Too much chilling.
Yeah, too much chilling.
Was it ignorance and stupidity, or was it more just like not like using time efficiently towards education?
It wasn't about me. It was the classes that my mom chose were not up to Florida's already
Okay.
poor standards of education. It's kind of bad.
Yes.
There wasn't anything else that I could have done. It's just the classes were not to standard. They were not.
What would you say was the most difficult part of making that transition?
I think probably feeling like I was being judged. I'd grown up bullied because amongst the homeschooled kids that I would associate with that were part of like the group, they were all rich and white, and I'm paler now than I was back then because I work in a fucking library and I go out at night. I'm not in the
No,
sun.
I get it. I'm half black, so I get it.
But at the time, I was always outside,
too.
and so I was, like it's a bunch of these snotty white homeschooler kids
Yeah.
who are also obnoxious and strange, but they ride horses in the afternoon, so they're like better than me.
Mhm.
So I was getting bullied by them. I was getting bullied by the neighborhood kids. Look at this fucking girl,
You were getting bullied by the kids that needed to get bullied.
Yeah,
Yes, bro.
that's always a tough spot to be in,
I
for real.
was getting shit on all the time,
I'm
dude.
sorry.
I was kind of fed
That's
up with
the
it.
character building.
I was just about to say it builds character.
Yeah,
though.
for real.
Yeah.
And when I hit public school, I was so sure that was gonna happen to me. But in a big ass school like Central, nobody really pays it. Like I didn't get bullied in high school, and I was strange. I can't tell you that enough times. I was strange.
I relate very strongly because I didn't do homeschool for nearly as long, but I had a very kind of similar experience because I was also socially very weird and different because started out with the homeschooling, but then going to a private Christian school for elementary and middle school. It was a very different dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but there wasn't so much a culture shock thing for me or anything like that. And I also didn't really experience bullying. But there was just a lot of like social norms and social things that I just never been exposed to, or like there was a lot of things I just didn't get yet that I had to learn just by being around people.
Mhm.
I mean, like for me, I went through a try hard phase because I needed to. I needed to do good at school so I could fucking graduate.
I thought you were saying you were making COD montages or something.
No, try hard.
360 no scoping people.
But I
No,
needed.
I'm just playing.
I also really wanted to like make friends because it's like, fuck, am I ever gonna get this chance again? Like.
I get that.
And so I feel kind of bad for the people that I interacted with that didn't end up becoming close friends. Sorry.
It's okay.
but like the people that did accept me were probably set me down a path for a little bit that wasn't really great. My best friend of 4 months was this kid that was actually addicted to heroin. So, like the meth jokes, that, you know, um, and
What?
he had
Yo,
he had serious problems. I mean, the police called on us. The police caught my plate when we were doing some definitely not legal stuff. And the police came, and my parents were at the school, and they're like, the officer told my dad, "Get ready to never see your daughter again."
Oh my god,
And I went
that's
from
crazy.
bro!
I
The
went
officers
from
around here be talking crazy.
Yo, you
I went
gambling, man?
Yo, for real.
I went
Oh,
from
Lord.
homeschooled to the police are at the school talking to my parents, and my best friend is like jacked off heroin right now. Like, what the fuck do I do? And it was a sink or swim kind of moment. When I graduated, I lost contact with that kid, and I looked him up, and he's been on a missing persons list for the past 2 years.
Man,
Yeah,
Shit.
it's the bad kids. I don't like saying that they were bad people. They just had bad tendencies, but it exposed me very fast to a different way of living that I had not encountered before. And it
Mhm.
kind of normalized that for me because I was like, okay, so this is the weird shit that homeschooled people do, and then this is the normal shit that normal people do, and I didn't know how to determine or figure out
You
that
didn't realize that both were weird shit.
I didn't realize that
Both
there's
were different ends of the
something
spectrum.
else that you should be doing that
Yeah.
is neither of those
Yeah, I get
things.
that. Yeah.
yeah.
And with that being the graduated at 17, I turned 18 2 weeks later, and then I'm in the world by myself. Having those be the only two perspectives that I really understood was a crazy like lead out to life,
Yeah.
like kids would bring guns to school, not to shoot up the school, but because if there was beef in the parking lot, they were gonna fucking shoot you. Like people would show me their guns in the bathroom. People were leaving wine bottles in the bathroom. They were doing weed. They were bringing literal heroin to school.
It's nowadays central.
Another actually there would be fights all the time. Like it was. And then you'd have the good prim country kids, and to me, those motherfuckers reminded me of the people that bullied me when I was homeschooled. So I wasn't trying to hang out with them,
Yeah.
because I was always so worried about being judged. And so I think the reason why they accepted me is because they just thought I was retarded a little bit, just a little bit goofy. And it was like
I think I can relate to that too. Actually,
Yeah.
like because I okay. I don't want to make this about me, but just real quick to kind of explain why I relate to that. Because in high school, I think because of the kind of like social differences, like dynamic that I missed out on that I was learning, I didn't really fit in one group.
yeah.
High school is all well known for being like very cliquey. Like people are kind of figuring out who they are and they gravitate towards different groups depending on interests and styles and all these things. And I didn't have one central thing like that. I floated around to a lot of different people because I was athletic. I kind of understood and kind of got along with some of the like jock type kids. I was also really nerdy and into gaming, so I was I was hanging out with like some of the nerdy kids. I was also kind of into the video production things, so I hung out with the AV people and some of the theater people, and so I saw like a wide spectrum of different personalities and stuff, but I never felt like I related to anyone too much. I was just kind of my own thing. And I also had a tendency to be extremely overly talkative. Isn't that ironic? And so like I would kind of I wasn't like aiming to be a class clown necessarily, but I was just that person who would just like comment and like blurt out things like when the teacher's talking, and I would just say something and crack a joke, and sometimes the class would laugh and sometimes it'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Crickets.
Sometimes it'd be crickets and they'd be like, they would look at me like, what is wrong with you? Because I would say some really out of pocket shit sometimes, and that was a little bit isolating but also kind of freeing at the same time,
Yeah.
because it was like
Kind of realize you're on your own in your own lane.
I'm in my own lane, but it made me feel powerful in a weird way, because I was like, I have this unique kind of influence on like my surroundings, that I am kind of almost like I can control the vibe if I really want to, you know? And so I did not wield that with responsibility at that time. But yeah, that was my experience with that. And I actually don't think I know or talk to a single person that I was friends with in high school anymore.
Yeah,
I've disconnected from all of them.
I don't really either. I mean, like there were cool people that I met. Like I started I had like my things that I already knew that I liked. So I liked art and I liked music. So instead of, hanging out with the art kids or the music band, I would do graffiti and freestyle. And like to me that's more more badass than being friends with some like band kids. So
As a band kid, yeah.
I was choosing to move that way, and like it just lined up, and it was kind of a mess. I never really felt super confident when I was in high school. I didn't really feel confident until like last year, to be honest. But like it kind of gave me I think it gave me a little bit of an edge, spectrum of experiences.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, like when you go through various like when you experience different states of being, from unconfident to confident, to uncoordinated to coordinated, to unknowledgeable to knowledgeable, or unpopular to popular, or anything, like when you like experience kind of both ends of a thing like that, and then you come out the other side of it like kind of understanding yourself better, uh that's really powerful. And because a lot of people get stuck in one place or the other,
Yeah.
like the popular kids or whatever, who are popular since middle school or whatever, and they grow up and they just always are that person, kind of. They don't ever experience what it's like to be
They
anything
they
else.
lock into an archetype that works for them,
Right.
and.
But like, yeah, I think it's powerful when you experience a range of things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like
It's what allows you to have like your own perspective and like go out there and like do your own thing.
Yeah.
For sure. And like one of the things that I think was also valuable to me throughout my life, especially recently, is that I always was kind of like I want to learn about this. Like if it's
Mhm.
cool, I want to know how to do that, And so like it it really let me throw myself into different things. Like I was doing the martial arts for 10 years, right? So,
Wow.
I'm not only doing the graffiti and the freestyling, but I was also a pretty good fighter. That was probably when I was like at my peak in terms of fighting. So it's like I was hella deranged, and I said weird things, but like I had these traits that I had learned how to do, and that got me acceptance. And like I've since learned how to do a bunch of other cool stuff that I really like, and it's like learning will never not help you. There will never be
Absolutely.
a time where you learn some shit and it's like, damn, I wish I didn't learn that. Well, maybe if you like
I,
somebody cheats on you, but even then, that's kind of a
I know, like
blessing.
I'd rather
I've
know.
definitely,
I'd rather know.
I've definitely noticed in my old age, that fucking the older you get,
Coming up on
the
what,
less
50?
fun the facts become. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it
So-
doesn't have to
Well, I
be.
mean, I guess it depends, but
It doesn't
I
have
kinda
to
see what
be
you're saying.
something like written knowledge, but more so skills is what I'm mostly referring to. Like learning how to, like, I ride a motorcycle now. I don't know if I told you that.
No,
Yeah.
that's
I fucking ride a
checks out.
motorcycle, dude. Like that is some cool shit. That's like awesome, and I love it. And it's like if the zombie apocalypse ever comes and there's a motorcycle on the side of the road, like I know what to do. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be all right.
Hell yeah.
Like just like things like that, like different skills. You just
Well, there's also a difference between like knowing about something and knowing something. Like knowing about a thing, like a surface level understanding of a thing, and then knowing how to actually execute
yeah.
with that knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only difference is really just practice, and
Well, it's getting to actually use. It's a
yeah,
skill. Like it's like getting knowing a certain knowing about a thing is different than actually like doing it and living in that space of actually
The
performing.
experience is the catalyst that transmutes intelligence into wisdom.
Yes.
It's that lived experience,
Right.
which that experimentation of what you know, and then it either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
hmm
And this is the dead part for a moment. Where we have to collect
Yeah, hit
ourselves.
the technical difficulties screen
Yeah,
with,
right.
with the little Indian guy.
Of the Indian guy.
Yeah, the ones with the. I don't know why they used to do that, but those we're having issues. We'll be right back. Screens used to always have like the Indian with the headdress like in the middle of it. I
I've
forget
never seen that.
why they did. It's like super old school.
I know the color thing. That's just a color test, like a broadcast test. I've never seen the Indian thing.
No, it's like that's like earliest TV type beat.
I'll
But
take your word for it. I've never seen. I don't know if I've seen
I
that.
pull that shit
like-
up, Jamie. Editing Devin.
Yeah.
Editing Devin will show you.
What's
So
next?
your derangement, your homeschool derangement. You mentioned previously that like you had 2 full-time working parents and were kind of left to your own devices. How exactly did that work with homeschooling? And like what it seems like you also had like a lot of free time too. So like what exactly did you do to like how did that because I mean, I don't know, school has always been so regimented. Like I've always been in public school. So like what does that look like? Like is there like a regimen or is it kind of like the Montessori approach where you just kind of go wherever your whims take you?
That's a good question.
Kind of both. I mean, I had like these. I started public school when I was 16, or I started IRSC when I was 16. I went to college when I was 16. The ages of like 10 to 16, or maybe 12 to 16, were like kind of haphazard. My mom would like leave the textbooks and the lesson plans on the table, and what I generally would do would be go outside and go to the park, and then rush home and do it in like an hour and be like, yeah, I didn't do anything today. Or like I don't know what foolishness. I was like outside all the time. But once I hit 16, then I'm in college, and I had a car, so I would drive to college. I'd do the stupid things that I needed to do, which I was terrible. I failed statistics 3 times. I had to write a letter to the dean begging him to let me pass.
Well, that's validating. That's the reason I dropped out of college was statistics.
Yeah, I hate, and everybody was telling me this is the easiest math class, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to.
It's such a toss
Yo,
up depending on your teacher.
Okay.
That's one of those subjects where
I
it's
was.
like
I had that same experience with geometry for some reason because I was also told this is like one of the easier maths, and I just struggled with geometry so hard.
yeah, it's
And
one
then
of those-
algebra 2,
Yeah.
algebra 1, and I never actually took pre-algebra, but algebra 1 was a breeze. Then algebra 2 was retarded. I could not get it. I did not understand. It did not click for me. And geometry, I actually almost failed geometry. I got like a D or something. I got just good enough grades for the year to like move on.
Yeah.
But reality was I didn't really retain any of that other than, yeah, that's a square.
It
you
took me 5 years to get my associate's degree, which was in agriculture ultimately. And I
You got a
was
degree. That's more than I can say.
it was very I tanked my GPA down to a 2.8. And then
no. 2.8 GPA.
no,
what
passing.
a
That's
hoodlum.
crazy.
well,
Yeah.
that was my grad. It was fucked. But when I came back down here from New York, I was like, I want to go to school, and now I'm a grown up, so I can take this seriously. And like I was getting some good grades the last couple classes before, and like that, I don't know, like it was validating. I mean, I don't know why the hell you would give a teenager college coursework. I don't know whose idea that
Very
was.
common down here.
Yeah.
Very common.
I also did that because I
Like, bro, there is no
Yeah.
16-year that is going to be like I've known somebody that got their associates at 18 when they graduated, but at the same time, it's like, bro, like, how are you? Like, I can't really conceive of it.
I was kind of on the road to doing that, and then I kind of just stopped because I didn't care enough. But it's interesting how different your like, not you specifically, but Royal you, how different your perspective on learning, just the concept of learning a thing, is when you shift your mindset to actually like caring about it,
Yeah.
like making it a goal. But when you're like young and it's just like, okay, this is your life now, like this is the thing you have to do, it's just like cast upon you. It's like I just have to make it through it.
Mhm.
But then when you get older and you find interests and you find things you like, you start to like, oh, I actually really want to know more about this and
Yeah.
become proficient, and
I
it's a very different thing.
When I was young, at least, I was extremely emotional. I was crying all the time. Like I have got diagnosed with major depressive disorder last year, and I think I'm subclinical now. But looking back on who I was as a kid, bro, I was going through it. I was so sad all of the time, and like any kind of emotional heightening due to hormones as a teenager is crazy enough, and that's something that we all go through. But for your average depressed kid in Florida, bro. Like, why? Like, I just don't get giving them like college work. Like, I understand it sets you up for success. You learn X, Y, and Z, but I feel like the damage that you do to your GPA is permanent. You know, and if you're the kind of kid that can successfully do that anyways, then waiting 2 years until you're 18 is negligible.
Mhm.
You know, if you have the personality to make it happen, it's not you'll be fine. And a lot of the kids, the kid that I knew that graduated with his associates at 18, burned out a year after starting his bachelor's and hasn't done it. You know, like I see no
I burned out
I see no
second year of high
actual
school.
long-term advantage to heaping education on a kid like that. Like, you can tell me this and that about the brain being porous, but you need maturity to actually use it, and you need maturity to learn it, you
Well, I
know?
think what it is really is
I
more
don't
more than anything is just fast tracking credentials. So like like
Yeah.
having a having 2 added years of youth on top of a degree that can land you jobs that people with a degree can't, does kind of give you a leg up in the workforce, especially in Florida, where it is damn near impossible to get up on anything as a young person unless you have a family that can really help you get there.
Mhm.
It kind of allows for an opportunity for somebody really willing and able, as you mentioned, to like really lock in and throw down to make it out of that, and make something of themselves in
Mhm.
theory, right? But
Mm.
I kind of I see both sides of it, because I kind of think I agree with you that like I feel like education should be more spread out in your life, at least a little bit.
I think that you
But
should be encouraging long-term learning.
yes,
And you don't do that in our current culture that promotes burnout. I only went to public school for 4 months, so I feel like I have a pretty unbiased opinion on how that actually works. Like, I'm not jaded particularly about my experience. I had a pretty good time, to be honest. You know, I wasn't suffering or anything. But I feel like all of the people that I've ever talked to about it, you know, unless you were like the fucking shit at school, you were not having a good time. You know, no matter how well off or good you are at
that's
something.
that's very true.
I would say I had a very neutral time, and even then, I cringe when people say things like, "Oh, I wish I could go back to high school days." I'm like, "No, I never want to go back to that. I want to
Yeah.
keep moving forward."
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I definitely
You
remember
know?
my high school days fondly, but like not. I wasn't like too much more up than I am now.
I'm
you know,
pretty like
I feel pretty good.
I'm pretty steady neutral on it personally. Like, I don't know, I don't feel one way or not. Like,
Most of my gripes with high school are basically just with the public school system and how it affected my experience and the overall vibe and spirit and culture of the school. Because like I was there, like between like I witnessed the transformation happen in real time between my sophomore and junior year when our principals got switched out. We had Miss Hunt, who was there for the past like 30 years and was like the core and cultural like pillar stone of the school. And then when she left, Mr. Fabrizio, this fucking like 4'8" hunchback, bald, like smarmy, fucking greasy looking sack of shit, fucking PTA dick sucking,
shout out
boot
Mr.
licking,
Fabricio.
get your fucking bag and fuck these kids. Give me my money, money me
Don't fuck
now.
the kids.
Not figuratively. And who
Not
knows? He looked like the type. He looked
figuratively.
like the type. Allegedly, he allegedly looks like the type. Fuck that guy. Because when he came in, it was literally like
Jamie, throw a picture of him now. No, I'm just kidding.
the gates went up. The out of school lunches were shut down.
Damn.
You know, the no phones. If you saw a phone, it was confiscated. You had to pick it up at the end of the day.
See, this is the opposite that I had, because my growing up like in private schools, it was very like there was a higher like moral standard because it was like Christian schools, and more strict on certain things, like, you know, we had uniforms and no phones and all these things. And then high school was the complete opposite, where I suddenly didn't have to wear a uniform at all, and didn't really have to care about my appearance at all. Really, I showed up in my pajamas all the time. Well, not all the time, but very often. And my school in particular, I don't think this is common with a lot of schools, but my school in particular was very pro technology. And so they kind of left it up to like the individual classes, individual teacher. The overall school philosophy was like pro tech, because they wanted you to be able to use resources for all kinds of things, online resources and things. And but each individual teacher and class could determine like what their rule set was. Because like some teachers would very often do like an online like course, like a study guide thing, or they would allow you to use your technology for taking notes, or other examples like, or my economics class, we did like a stock trade simulator thing, and so like we had to use our tech for that. There was like a lot of examples of things where they really embraced it. So that was a weird kind of shock to me, where it's like I can actually use my phone in class and not get yelled at. Like I can just pull it out and text somebody and they don't really care. It was very weird to me at first.
You said, are you taking college courses now?
No, not right now.
No, you're just giving yourself that like gap year.
I took a couple that are not associated with my degree just because I was interested in them, and because I wanted to make sure that I could still like focus on a course. I'm thinking about taking some over the summer. I don't really know right now.
What for? Thinking about pick up something for like music business? That's kind of
yeah, maybe. That's another reason why I'm kind of waiting, is that I feel like there's like paths that I like right now that are open in front of me and that I believe that I'm capable of doing. I just don't know which one to choose. And like right now,
Yeah.
I work for the county, so I have a path. I have a path in front of me that I don't really need to do anything spectacular for, So I feel like it's alright. I kind of want to get a CompTIA certification, because with the library I work with technology and people with disabilities, so to be able to kind of lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah, cybersec's all the rage nowadays. It's the IT stuff. I feel like every person that I know that doesn't have an established career is like going into some version of like cybersecurity or IT. So
it's in demand.
Yeah, very much so, and understandably so.
I know that like cybersecurity, especially for the county, has been a big issue. There was a massive data leak last year in November.
It's in demand until the quantum computers are all
I was about to
everywhere,
say,
and then none of it matters anymore.
That's why you get a certification and not a degree.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how degrees have fallen off so rapidly since certifications have become so much more widespread and normalized. Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah. I did dual enrollment. So starting high school, I actually did the IB program that my school had, which was International Baccalaureate, which was basically like more advanced than advanced placement. It's like a higher level than AP.
It was an international curriculum.
Yes, which supposedly the whole point of it is it helps you get into more options of colleges, and basically you just have like a higher esteemed version of your of a high school diploma, like a higher regarded version is basically with more credits and things. And so I started in that, and due to circumstances that would take a whole other podcast to talk about, I'm not going to get into that right now, I had to leave that school and I moved, and then I half a year later came back to the same school and rejoined the school. And when you leave, you can't rejoin the program. So from there, instead of IB, I did AP and dual enrollment, and so I was basically getting finishing high school and doing the beginning of college stuff. It was like midway through high school where I pretty much kind of in the back of my head knew, like, I didn't really plan or want to go move on to actual like college for anything, because I felt like everything that I really felt passionate about doing really didn't realistically require it.
Yeah.
So that wasn't my path. But I have a lot of respect for people who stay in classes or continue to do classes of things that they are like chasing, like things that they're interested in, or if it's or for the networking aspect of it too. Also very valuable.
I feel like I would like to have a PhD one day. I do not expect it to happen before I'm 60, but like doing a class or two every year, of something that I'm interested in, like I don't see any disadvantage to it,
PhD before 60 is very doable. Seems
Yeah,
like.
but I would want to give myself time. Like I don't want it to be one of those things where it's
Dr.
like,
404.
holy shit, I'm pressed about this, like I don't want
Yeah.
to I don't want it to stress me out. I want it to be something that I just did because it's cool. I have been considering neuroscience for research, going the research side of things, or I thought for a little bit about being a therapist, and then I met people that would tell me their shit, and it's like I cannot do this for 40 hours a week, and
I
once a
can't
week,
listen to other people's problems
an
for too
hour a
long.
week is fine,
Yeah.
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 Beyond that, I don't care how much I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
But it's still interesting to know how like things work and stuff. So maybe being like a research route would be cool. I don't know.
Well, like even just like
International
Yes.
relations would also be sick.
I feel like that would be one that you would kill it with.
That would be awesome.
I was gonna say even just a passing like interest in psychology and stuff like sets you up to understand people way more than the average person.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I like arguing with people. Like if
I do too.
if I go to a kava bar and I read like some crazy book, I read Pete Hegseth. He's the Secretary of Defense now. He read a book back in 2022 called "The Battle for the American Mind," and it was basically his discussion on why American education sucks. And I agreed with several things that were in there, and a lot of the things made me kind of feel a little bit nauseous. And it's really interesting to see now that the Department of Education has been officially executive ordered to, kill itself. And it is so wonderful going and arguing with people. When I read the book, "Hey, don't worry, bro, nothing will happen." And now it's like, well, he wrote it out. He had a plan. Like he knew exactly what he wanted and he did it. And it's
So I'm ignorant on this topic. Lay it out for me.
um
What's like your take on
it's
what did you gather from that book, and then what is your opinion after it?
So he takes on a destroy rather than reform stance. I think it's pretty across the board that most people would agree the Department of Education needs improvement, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on. His stance is basically that no matter where you're getting your education from, even if it's a private Christian school, which aligns with his belief system, it is still taking its method of teaching. He calls it paideia, the way and manner of teaching.
What's the word?
Paideia.
Okay.
He's still those better schools still take their paideia from the Department of Education, which was created by Democrats. And so no matter what you're teaching, the sheer teaching method is still democratic and it's still poisoning the American mind. And he calls it the battle for the American mind because he wants to change the way that you teach people and the way that you interact with children in order to create it. And the things that I did agree with were that he thinks that it's important to have beauty in schools. I think it's really important that people learn how to appreciate beautiful things and how to seek them out and why they should seek them out. He argues for more history being taught in schools. So do I. I think that's really important. It's really cool. That's one of the things that I missed out on when I was homeschooled. He has good things that he's arguing with. I mean, he takes a lot of his stuff from like Greek and Roman roots. The major point of contention for me is that he is so focused on a religious aspect that it detracts from everything. Like his stance is that it's impossible to learn about geology without also including God because God created the earth. And I was raised Roman Catholic. My mom is director of religious education at her church. I was homeschooled for 11 and a half years underneath of that belief, and that is largely why I did not learn a lot about history is because the history that I was learning was about, Saint Agnes or Saint Francis of Assisi, or like people. I learned a lot about medieval saints. That was my history. I didn't learn that much about American history. I did not learn anything about global history. And so I feel like I really know what he wants because I got the exact education that he wants everybody to have. And I feel like it made me a curious person, it made me, someone that likes to learn, but that's
It's narrow.
it's so easily removed from the religious aspect, and the religious aspect is what held me down because it was focused more on that than on anything that's applicable. And the trouble with arguing against arguments that come from a religious base is that God is something that is unconquerable. Nothing that happens on this earth is ever going to be as significant as the reward of heaven or the punishment of hell. There's pretty much no arguing it because it's so infallible to them. And he takes on that perspective that like there can't be there can't be an argument against this because it is the core of everything that is. It's very interesting now to see like the Department of Education dismantled, and a lot of the people that I know are teachers, or I work at the library for people with disabilities, so a lot of the people that I'm interacting with and helping to find resources for are teachers who have kids that are on IED plans, which are funded by the Department of Education. A lot of the people that I hang out with outside are speech therapists that work in public schools, or they are regular teachers or music teachers or his English, like it feels so incredibly personal to me, even as someone that spent literally 4 months in a public school, and it's like it's all coming to fruition. Doers don't have to be good people. All you have to be able to do is make it happen.
Is to do, yeah.
Yep. It's crazy. That was long-winded. I'm sorry.
No,
No,
that's what I asked for. I think I don't want to get too deep into it because it might be a little too personal. But I definitely understand where you're coming from, like arguing almost any topic with someone who's coming from the religious angle, because they exactly what you said. It's just there's no like there. It's almost like the arguing with like communists, because it's that same like ends justify the means type of mentality,
and also what I think it is a lot of people trying to argue from the perspective of lived experience without being taught how to argue.
Also,
Without
yeah.
because if you don't understand rhetoric, you don't understand how you're kind of like boxing yourself into
in the corners.
and which makes it kind of like impossible for you to play the game properly. It's like when you're a professional video game player, it's very different playing against the game as understood by another professional video game player is a very different game than if you're playing against somebody who just picked up the controller for the first time or plays casually.
Yeah.
Completely different mindset and way to approach the game. And so it's like when you're dealing with somebody who gives religious statements, they're often either coming from a place of indoctrination or lived experience that overrides their what they've been told and taught. And so that's one of those things that unless they are like kind of predilected to, and I'm not sure if that's the right word, predisposed. If they're not predisposed to kind of giving the self the benefit of the doubt of how stupid they are and how ignorant, infallible they are as people and their knowledge, they can think what they know and think that they know what they know, and
they don't realize
it's hard for them to make the argument in their own head for why
they don't realize what they don't know.
I feel
they
like
don't realize that there is even a category of things that they don't know sometimes.
But that said, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Because there is something to be said as somebody who has found God through lived experience and by no means through what I've learned, like through reading a book or anything like that. I was an atheist for a while and literally through a combination of what I've learned religiously and have gone on to learn more independently and my lived experience, those things have kind of, got me to a point where,
That's the God alarm.
Yeah.
He's listening.
That's a preach alarm.
Yeah.
It's gotten to a point where, I feel like I can Well, it's gotten to the point where I don't feel like I have to argue with people
Mhm.
about it, and so I often won't. Which is the
Yeah.
other thing is like most of the people who are confident in that, are often aware enough not to use religious arguments with a non-religious person, or they're just not out
Well,
here having the
that's
conversations in the first place.
yeah. I feel like when I
Which
are
makes the ones that you can argue with a lot more fun because they're the ignorant ones that you can kind of flip around and.
when I argue with about anything or debate or whatever you want to say, discuss well, I guess any topic where the religious like when they're coming from a religious angle, I try to like fit my argument within the framework that they understand to kind of come at the same level. Not that one level is better than the other, but that we're at least thinking at things equally, because what you said about there's never anything more important than the promise of heaven or punishment of hell or whatever. That is always like, at least for Christians, that it's like the main, always like the main thing, and whatever. And so like,
I feel like Abrahamic religions in general tend to be very dogmatic. There's very clear definitions of right and wrong. And then
Yeah.
you have a lot of religions that are very open, and that are including a lot of gray area. And I feel like Christianity has a lot of potential to include the gray areas of life. But the way that they're structured, even from how power is distributed, is extremely dogmatic. And if you go against it, then you're not a person with a suggestion that can be respectfully turned down. You're a heretic and a sinner who's just fucked yourself for eternity,
yeah.
And that's the crazy thing too, is that those people don't recognize that they're not the ones who are supposed to be saying that the people that are actually that way will figure it out naturally
Yeah,
due
I
to
mean,
divine judgment. So them going out and like calling these people heretics and like being an asshole is literally just making things worse for everybody.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
if heaven and hell are real, then no matter what consequence you face on earth, you're also still going to be punished in hell. Like I don't like shame. I always felt a lot of shame for different things, and like it's so unnecessary. If I'm going to be punished eventually if it's real, and if not, then people have given me enough consequence for my actions here. Don't
Well,
give
there's
me.
something to be said for the value of shame,
Absolutely.
because shame is one of those forces that upholds like social order,
Mhm.
social like, I wouldn't say norm, but social like cohesion in a sense.
Yeah, and
Cultural
it's
cohesion.
definitely hard to appreciate that in today's social climate.
I,
But
I
like,
think there's extreme levels of it that are wrong and are destructive, but I also think it's in certain ways valuable.
I
Well,
guess the perspective is that shame should be delivered on a person to person level, and it can be given from a collection of people that are individuals, but it shouldn't be given by an institution. So like a church delivering shame is different than a bunch of like people at Walmart looking at me weird because I just did some crazy shit.
Well, often
I
those
can agree
people will
with
do
that.
that because the church told them to, and I think that that's where that kind of was for the longest time, is like you would have the people around you shaming you and persecuting you based on poor interpretations of the book, or whatever that caused them to act in such a way
Yeah.
versus you know yeah.
I kind of, I guess when I think of like religious people who are kind of missing the point and are the more dogmatic individuals who are kind of just doing the thing because they were told to,
Mhm.
and they don't really have like a true belief or connection to the root of the religion of like what they believe is God. The ones who are just kind of like following the rules and whatever, I I kind of think back to that. I don't know what the verse is. I couldn't quote the Bible by verse, but it was something that Jesus said on the cross, which is like, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I feel that way when I run into those kind of people, and it's not as severe as a crucifixion, but it's still the same concept. It's like, I kind of have to just move on because you don't fully get, like, you don't get what you're doing. You just don't understand. So I'm just not gonna engage. I almost have to just like
Turn the other cheek.
turn the other cheek in a sense. Like hoping that one day they'll get it, but right now they just don't. It doesn't click for them. Like, yeah, I don't know. I could go into so many examples of that, but I won't. I'll save that for another time.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the tip that I'm on now. It's like the way I feel about it is like it's self-evident to the point where it's self-evident at a certain point to where either you're just not at that point yet, or the consequences will be suffered of never being at that point, however subtle or whatever they may be for whatever life you're living at the time.
And I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with spiritual belief of whatever. I have a problem with the concept of religiosity and the church as a like institutionalized structure or construction of a church, of the church that we like uphold, or some people uphold, and of being like the force that it is.
Being what should determine the
Right.
culture.
And I also don't like religiosity because it's synonymous to fanaticism, which is like you're doing something religiously not because you actually care, but because it's just become routine.
And that goes into finishing off the thought that I was going to have before, but it's kind of the idea of like
because my family always, or like my grandmother specifically, always tried to drill into me to understand the difference between following a religion and having a relationship with God.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Religion and relationship are completely different things. You can religiously,
execute your son on a cliff.
Yeah. I mean, you could religiously wake up and have orange juice every day, or if you cared about your vitamin C, you would you could
why you're drinking the orange juice. It doesn't just taste good or feel good or make you feel like you're saved. You know that it's doing something for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I was younger, I wanted to be a nun. I believed for a really long time, still for the majority of my life. And it was like I wanted to be a nun because I felt like it was too overwhelming to create a path for myself. I was not a doer. I was insecure, etc. And the idea that someone could just tell me what I needed to do, or someone that would always be there and would always love me, like that gave me so much comfort. I think that
for a lot of people throughout history.
it was definitely valuable to me. I participated in the church to my fullest extent. I was an altar server. I was a lector, so I'd be the person that goes up and reads from the book. I was an usher, so I'd be the person passing the collection baskets. I would be at church multiple days a week. I was involved in youth group. I went to CCD, which is the Catholic Catechism. I was so involved, and I really thought that being a nun would be the path for me because it's structured, it's minimalistic, and I don't have to think about anything. And I kind of felt like I was abandoned by God after I moved out. I kind of thought it was my sins in high school that led to him abandoning me, and I guess I kind of got jaded against the religion of God because so many things happened to me that it felt like after genuinely dedicating my life to him in the best way that I could, how could this happen to me? And now I have beliefs that kind of don't align with religion at all. I don't believe in free will. And that's probably the biggest thing that stops me because that's like everything that Christianity is predicated off of is that you have decisions and you choose whether or not you go to God. But it's
this could be I don't want to necessarily deviate the topic too much. I would say that there's a hot debate about that.
Yeah, there is.
I would say that free will exists on a spectrum.
Well, my point just because some Christians very vehemently believe that God knows everything, past, present, and future, then they believe, therefore, there is no free will because he already knows what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So some people believe there's no free will because they already know what you're going to do anyway. Then others believe there is the free will because you have to make the choice to go to him.
I have argued it with a couple of different people, and I actually brought two of them to my side, my perspective, and that they now believe that. It's more so for me than it's just like I believe that my belief system teaches a lot of the same things that Christianity does. I believe that forgiveness is the most important thing that you can give to yourself and other people. If I think that, you are acting based on your nature, you aren't really going to do anything else, and I shouldn't be mad at you for being who you are even if it hurt me, like
Almond's here.
greetings.
Hey,
There's a mic for you right there, ready to go if you want to jump in.
for the last 5 minutes of our podcast.
Yeah.
It just it gives you permission to forgive. It gives you an ability to understand yourself and understand others. It's just acceptance and forgiveness is like the biggest tenets of my belief system. It's not doomsday shit. I hate when I start a conversation and you're like, oh, so you just hate yourself then. It's like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm not,
It sounds like a very happy spiritual middle ground between Catholicism and Protestantism, where it's like,
it's like it works for me.
What I kind of lean towards what you said, that it's the free will is kind of a spectrum, because I think it's a combination of the body and mind combating each other, because I think we have ultimate domain over ourselves, but the body and our instincts and our nature and things heavily influence subconsciously the decisions we'll make.
I have zero domain over myself. I don't even know what having a domain over yourself means. Like that, like an IP.
Pure animal over here.
Feral all day.
Grab a chair and join in on camera.
Okay.
Squeeze in over here somewhere, or just stand.
I can stand.
There's a chair. There's a chair, I think, folded up behind that chair.
I'll stand. It's
Okay.
Hey,
There he is. Hey, Almond's here.
What up, dog? Long time no see.
Long time no see for real. Except for on the stream podcast.
Well,
But that's
no
not-
see
yeah.
for real.
Yeah.
The for real was doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
We were talking about free will in religion and things.
Oh,
Yeah.
Very,
the good
very
shit.
easy time to join
Yeah.
into the
Okay.
conversation.
thank
I just want to say, I think that,
Come in.
in lieu of the, not in lieu, kind of
get
in
like a-
line with the Carl Jung quote of, your subconscious, if you don't learn to take control of your subconscious will take control of you.
Yes.
I think that right now, more than ever, free will is only as free as you are aware of your ability to control it.
Yes.
Because if you're not exercising your free will, there are so many forces that understand
That push you in a direction.
psychology and how to manipulate the will of people to such an exact science, to such a diabolical science, that you will be overtaken by these forces that are out there trying to, make
Control
you feel a certain type of way, do a certain type of thing, deadass, unironically. They're out there, cackalaacking with their hands over the fucking crystal ball, making that car cut you off so you're about to get off the highway, just like the
The
meme song.
Rothschilds
Yeah,
deciding that my
exactly.
car won't start on the way here.
Exactly. Yeah, straight up. They did that. Bro, we see you.
Bush
No.
did that.
Yeah, but thanks, Obama. But no, but
I
no, for real. Like there are. It is like kind of getting into like the whole. It's what people talk about when they say spiritual warfare or the psychic vampires, right? For the Alex Jones psychic
Energy
vampires.
vampires.
Yes, this is the type of thing that they're talking about.
Mm.
It's like if you're not, hot-blooded patriot, with red blood running through your veins, and the will that come and have the will that comes with that and the ability to see the unseen or whatever, it's very easy to get caught up in just the day-to-day mundane bullshit of life, to realize one day that like you are just kind of on autopilot, and it is very hard, no matter how conscious you are, to like break out of the habits that you found yourself in, and then you end up
I
being
think
like
we're
kind
all
of trapped in.
raised in a way where we're kind of supposed to be on autopilot until you break free from that. I mean, at least
Definitely expected to be.
yeah, you're
Mm.
kind of expected to be a part of the herd. You don't want to be too different, especially when going through public school and everything. You don't want to be an
Mhm.
outlier. You don't want to be an outcast, typically anyway. Otherwise, you're labeled antisocial or weird in general. And so it's as though our society kind of leads us on a path of conformity. Um, and then once you get old enough and you realize this shit isn't for me, that's when you finally like kind of wake up and see the difference between how you were living your life before and the possibilities that life has to offer.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think you
So
started to say something.
yeah, so my perspective is that, or my definition of free will is the ability to make an informed decision. And I think that there are a lot of ways that we are fooled into the illusion of having a decision before us when we really don't. And it goes into what you were saying as well with like you there's always going to be something trying to manipulate you into something else, right? So when I was younger, I go into Walmart, I'm chilling with my mom at the checkout. Mom, can I have a piece of candy? Why is that? Well, it's because they designed the storefronts specifically in order to get you to buy things. And I didn't realize that until I'm older. And so now that I'm older, I go into Walmart,
And
I'm feeling kind of hungry, but they're right here. Oh, it's probably because of that. Now you learn next day that Skittles are red because colors go into it. There's color theory. There's the structure of the stores. There's
Why
the
is
people
McDonald's red and
around
yellow?
you.
and then not only those things, the marketing
Yes.
psychology, but also your like going back to biology, your body like wants certain things.
Yep.
So
And
when
then
you deliver like, or if you have like a bad diet or whatever, like you get hooked on a thing or whatever it is, your body starts wanting more of that thing and you become like used to that.
yes, and like even and then you go on social media and like there's
Your
you
gut
know
biome controlling your cravings is like the main thing I'm talking about.
yeah, like there's just so many factors,
Yeah.
from biological to the things that are in the store to the things that you heard or thought about like 3 days ago.
Like the magazines that are like,
yeah,
look at her. She has a perfect waist. This is how you can have a perfect waist in 3
lose
hours.
20 pounds in 3 days.
Yeah,
hours,
yeah, I
like
don't know. It'd be a drug or something. It'd be
Yeah.
like them trying to give you crack.
Ozempic?
Yeah, Ozempic.
Like, I just feel like no matter how far back you think you've peeled the fucking onion, there will be another layer of manipulation that's getting to you. And I think that, it exists on a spectrum. Sure, we have the capacity for it, but I think that at this point there is not really anything. Like, why do I like music? Why the hell am I here? It's because the fucking guy I dated when I was a teenager liked music. Like, respectfully, I'm not gonna lie or front or anything. And why
You
was
didn't
I?
like music until you dated that guy as a
Well, why was
teenager?
I open to music? Because my mom was, a lady that liked music and she was always playing it. It was comforting to me. And why did she like it goes back so far. And I think no matter how far you think that you've cracked the code, you really haven't. Like, if there's anything that I know about this life, it is you never actually got it.
Have
You
you ever
never have actually figured it out.
have you seen the show This Is Us?
No.
I feel like you'd like it.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say on that.
Well, that's why, and to that extent, that is kind of why I believe in, I am an anarcho-primitivist at the end of the day, return to monkey, live in tribes of like up to 20 people, and like nomadically live in accordance with the natural order. Because then at that point, all of your decisions are predicated on how you as an animal function within the symbiotic, natural order of things, and you can live and thrive under those circumstances. And that's kind of the counter to the state of manufactured consent, that perpetual manufactured consent that we find ourselves in now, because now there's just so all of our knowledge and wisdom of how and understanding of how the world works is predicated on so many hundreds of generations of trial and error and horrible conclusions driven from that trial and error, that finding the it is very easy to kind of get lost in that,
Lost in the sauce.
yeah, I didn't want to say, I said that earlier. I wasn't trying to say it again.
Call back.
But yeah, there was a point.
Well, I agree with going back to why I agree with you about Frua being a spectrum is because I think there's a lot of things that happen to you as you grow up and become a human that are influences upon you that you have no control over, and that
And no understanding.
and no understanding of, no comprehension of, that shapes you to a certain, like, not fully cookie cutter, but it starts to mold you a certain way. And then there's like a period, and it's like it could be a short period or a long period depending on your experience or how you develop as a person. But there's a period where you start to realize, okay, this is the circumstances that I kind of came from, and now now I have the capacity to decide what to do with it, where to go from here.
Hmm.
And so that's why I kind of lean into how you explained it. And I kind of agree with you also. It's kind of so it's a lot of things at
Yeah, I
once.
definitely understand like where you're getting at, because like and kind of what I said, it's like you can't expect to lift 100 pounds if you can't lift, and you can't expect to exercise your free will if you're not actively trying and educating yourself and constantly learning and broadening your perspective. Yes, it is more of it's like you'll never be able to lift a ton, but being able to lift half a ton as a person is still extremely impressive and can get you far.
But then I also I argue that there are circumstances where people are born into the world and are shaped and influenced to the point where they do not have free will, because they never experienced what it was like to be in a position to make their own decision.
Yeah, no, that's
on anything.
That's very
And
real.
so they have literally no concept of, I want to do this instead of that.
That also goes into how you're raised. Like some people's
And
parents
those are the
don't.
NPCs.
Some people's parents don't allow them to even have free will. Like recently, there was this guy that it turned out he was being held by his stepmom and his dad in the house until he was 30. He was
This
just,
is done in Florida. This is like here.
Sounds about right.
and the only reason he escaped was because I think he like started a fire with the limited supplies they had, or the limited supplies he had. They didn't feed him much or anything. And I think he was schooled until like 4th grade, and then they pulled him out, and then they just trapped him there. And so he started a fire
And literally
in the
discovered
house.
how to make fire for
He
himself.
for himself.
That's pretty incredible.
And
A genius.
he, after starting the fire, he decided to just like fake like he collapsed on the floor outside, so the ambulance had to take him to the hospital. And that's when they were like, wait, why is this guy undernourished and everything? What the hell's going on? And that's when everything came out about what his family or his parents have been doing to him. So there's like that extreme, but then there's also just the minor of like some parents just don't, like, I guess they're too afraid of the world and what may affect the child, that they don't allow them to even experience the world in that sense. And so,
And then I would argue, and I don't know how this might be this might be an even more rare thing, but the opposite extreme of people who are born into, everything is their choice. Like everything they do is an active choice, and they're not in touch at all with how to just feel emotions or how to just listen to what their body naturally wants to do or feel or think or whatever, and they have to micromanage almost,
I think I get what you mean, like micromanage their emotions.
Yeah,
like
they
just don't have
they don't know, they have no
intelligence.
emotional intelligence because they were, for whatever circumstances, I can't think of how that would happen exactly.
It can,
but
sometimes their emotional needs are just not met by their parents, so
Yeah.
they don't ever develop emotional
Yeah.
intelligence. It's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what a waveform! Nobody could hear that. I'm sorry.
Real talk though.
That's real.
To sum it up, abuse.
Yeah.
Abuse definitely.
This black
causes
pill
all
brought
of
to you by
these.
the narrator.
I think abuse is really limiting either aspect.
What do you mean?
To putting a stranglehold on either aspect of like your free will or of listening to your body. Like if you have no, like, putting too much like restriction on that is abuse.
Yeah.
There is also something to be said about just
Yeah.
not putting any discipline or any restrictions on.
Well, that's
also
what I mean.
being,
There's like there's a fine line.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think that it's that fine. I just think that most people are so, they just there's so little like through line culturally nowadays. There's no like baseline of like where exactly that exists. So everybody's just so like scrambled, and it just seems a lot more messed up.
I feel it's though because, for one, we're all kids, and then we grow up, try to figure shit out, and then we're like, this world isn't what I thought it was. And then we have a kid, and then you're like, oh, now I got to deal with this kid and also figure out what the hell this world I thought isn't.
Mhm.
And then, you know, some people are just also not even built to have kids, but they have kids nevertheless. And so now there's a kid with a parent who shouldn't have had a kid.
It's exactly that trope of you when you're a kid, you look at adults thinking, oh, they understand the world.
Yeah.
Then you become the same age as them, and you're like, I still
have
don't.
no
They
idea.
were faking it the
They
whole
were
time.
for real faking.
That's just real as fuck.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one younger brother.
Gotcha.
Yep, he's 2 years younger than I am.
Or
So
also
did he-
homeschooled then?
I was yeah, so you had the same
He was, but
experience.
the way that I was raised, I was homeschooled, really Catholic. I have a Mexican dad and a white American mother. And the way that worked was that there is a lot of patriarchy and there's a lot of sexism. And so even though he was younger and he arguably had a lot more issues than I had, he was permitted to go to public school at 14. When I did want to go to public school actually when I was 17. I spoke to a counselor at the school without my parents' knowledge, without my mom's knowledge. And my mom found out, she called the school and tried to get them to not accept me. And I wanted to graduate high school. So I went against her wishes, and the counselor supported me, so they didn't listen to my mom. And then I graduated. But my brother went to school for years before I had, even though he was younger, and he was more crazy because he was 8 when my parents started working full time. I was 10. You know, and 2 years makes a
Yeah.
difference when it comes to self-control and discipline.
That age, especially. Yeah.
For sure.
You know, like it's very interesting to hear like different people's perspectives on things, because I consider myself normal. Like I went through a lot of extremes, but I'm like a very regular person right now. I'm a normal motherfucker. Like,
For
like,
now.
I mean,
For
normal,
now. How old
normal,
are you?
I'm 22.
especially
Are you getting
nowadays.
4 more years.
Through what? How old?
22.
22.
22?
Yeah, I mean, normal is such an arbitrary and ephemeral thing nowadays. Especially, I feel like any kind of norm that's established is more economic than cultural.
Yeah, well,
You
I
know,
feel
so
like
it's
I'm
like you kind of can be whoever you want, as long as you're not out here like being violent against people for the most part.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
feel like
seems
I am like pretty PC though. Like I feel like I like kind of standard, and like to me, so like I feel like people always expect me to be like a certain kind of way because I have gone through a lot of different extremes, and it's like no, I'm actually just like you, you know. And it also kind of supports the anti-free will belief. I mean, like I've had so many like crazy life experiences that it's like bro, you know.
Sounds philosophical. I like philosophical stuff.
Well, okay, so now I want to shift a little bit. I'm going to ask you, is there any lanes or any topics or anything you want to dive into that we didn't cover yet? What, like anything that you're doing or Yeah.
I've been doing some more stuff with my art.
And art.
That's something I want to touch on. I forgot.
Oh, get
Was the
into it.
art, the visual art.
Yeah, I
want to hear this too. Do you do visual art?
yes, I do a couple of different kinds. My main format is collage work, but I've been getting into making clothes, like weaving specifically. And it's been going pretty well. I've done a couple things with like CDs and concrete, like multimedia, like large scale things, and it's been going really well. I had my art displayed at the community center off Eroso in Port St. Lucie.
That was the one you did with the CDs.
Yeah,
right?
that was
that was
like
cool.
260 something CDs.
Was there any kind like particular type of CD that you used or sourced for that? Like, what was the?
So the theme was recycled art. So they were all discards from the library, like just unwanted things. And like I like the idea of lost media reflecting the things that we are. Like we are what we do not consume. We are as much what we don't consume as what we do.
Mhm.
And so to see what people do not like, what they are not interested, I think is very reflective of what like the community, because it's the community resource the library is. And to see what they were not vibing with was very interesting.
That-
And like,
That
Believe
is
it or
very,
not-
that's very interesting.
believe it or
yeah.
not, All Friends, the series on DVD.
Yeah, that checks out. I
What
can't
else
think
did-
of a less
making that
like
up.
relevant and like piece of media.
You know, and like I've been selling my art a lot more. There was this awesome girl. She bought like 6 or 7 pieces off of me at one of my events, and that was great. She's like has like a little shrine in her room now because
That's
it's
cool.
yeah, it's been going well. I haven't been focusing too much on it, and I've been making more like small scale personal things for myself. But you know, it's exciting. It's an exciting path to be going down as well.
Yeah, and I feel like it plugs very well into the what I know anyway of like the kind of the more established like visual art scene around that area anyway. Thinking of like Malice and Gun and guys like that who do like this very like abstract, more so on Malice, the kind of the
Shout out Malice.
collage
Shout
work.
out Matic Gun.
Yes, big shout outs to those two.
Shout out Childish Gambino just for fun.
And no, get the fuck out of here.
Are you interested in collabing with another artist
Yes.
visually?
Yes, I am.
Word.
Yep. I have some minor experience doing that. There's one of the DJs, I don't think that was covered on the podcast yet. There's a DJ here that I've worked to make some merch for. We did lighters and we did pins. So I did the design for the pins, and there's this pin press, you know, you put the metal in, you put the print in. So we did that. That was a lot of fun. We did the lighters, which was also a lot of fun. I was in Miami recently, and there's this girl. She's a stylist, and I'm walking around, and I basically took a pair of jeans and I mimicked moss going down it by using a combination of beads, embroidery, and some very thick yarn.
I'm gonna interrupt your story real quick.
Good.
Okay. This stylist, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stylish was she?
1,000. It was
1,000,
a
alright.
big compliment. She
Okay.
liked my stuff, and so we've been going back and forth. And I'm gonna make her some custom things for her to use. She does like a zine down there, you know. Like it's awesome being able to work with other people, because like I literally make collages. I should be thinking about zines as an opportunity, you know, but I have not, you know, until she brought it up for clothes for photography to be put in the zine, you know, like
Yeah.
it's a completely different avenue, but like you still end up somewhere.
Yeah, and another thing that Malice
journey
does
of
all the
life.
time.
Scenes.
Yep, it's a very yeah.
So actually, this is so you told us how you got introduced into the music world. What got you into this?
I've been doing art probably longer than any other creative thing that I've been doing. And
How's that evolved over your life?
at first I was really into structure, creating structures.
Like architecture?
Yeah, I was working for my dad's landscaping company from the time that I was 10. You know, I'd be like a little leaf blower, you know, carry around the thing, or the weed whacker or something. And that really introduced me into landscape. So when I was 16, I was like, I want to get my degree in agriculture because this is going to be the way for me. And I came up with this plan. It was basically a blueprint. I came up with a budget for materials. I wanted to create an aviary in the backyard. Because I wanted it to be enclosed butterfly garden, and it held up for 6 years through a variety of hurricanes. It was very structurally sound. I sunk the post into concrete, stained the wood. You know, you use the hurricane things that you press the screen into, like mosquito netting.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
it was a huge project for me, and I did it by myself at 16. And I was like, I really like architecture. I really like plants. I like how this is coming about. But you can't, you know, it's a fucking backyard. My parents are not going to let me just build everything all over the backyard. So I was like, let me do this small scale. And I
If you
started,
introduce it to them as landscaping, maybe they let it slide.
No.
I don't think so. You know, and I got into like looking into models and stuff, and like you're gluing pieces of wood together. And I'm like, I could like make this pretty. I should put some paper on this. And then, you know, it just ended up being collage, you know, because it's still a combination of elements, but you don't need a blueprint for it. So now most of my stuff all of my stuff is using recycled materials. A lot of it from the library. And I like texture. I think that's why I was drawn to architecture at first, is because it's something, you know, it's not a piece of paper or a screen. It's something that you can like tactile and feel. And yeah, it's been very nice and very enjoyable for me.
Architecture itself is a multi medium
Yeah.
art form,
Well,
because like you said, there's the texture to it. There's the three-dimensional space aspect of
Yeah.
it, that you can be inside of the thing, on top of the thing. you know,
One of the reasons
you have to look at it, so it has to be up to your whatever your criteria is for beauty, you know. There's all these facets of it.
I wanted to get into landscape design because you're basically taking a space, right? And then you're deciding what is the path. Am I going to walk straight down here or am I going to wind through? And how much more area will that give me to create art? So this could be like a palm tree, and then there's like this broad expanse, or you can have the palm tree, this here, this here, this here, this here. You choose the foliage, like, do I want bright colors? Do I want mute colors? Do I want tall and skinny plants or something with thick plumes? Like, you're choosing texture, you're choosing color, you're choosing placement, you're creating an actual experience for someone, and that really, really appealed to me. But then I failed statistics 3 times, and I couldn't be a landscape architect. Yeah.
You want to reiterate what she said because nobody heard it?
I will try. You are a painter from the ground up, is what the narrator said, and that you definitely are one with the earth, it seems, in terms of art.
You're a real one.
So you
You stand on
do
business and
you
you're about
still
your
want
Real
to
earth
do
motherfuckers.
landscaping
Yeah.
or architecture, or not architecture, agriculture?
stand on dirt.
I'm interested in it. I got diagnosed with a heart condition, which makes it difficult for me to be sweating or extremely hot for too long. So maybe if I went up north, but like they wanted to put a pacemaker in me, so it's kind of serious. It's under control now, much better. I don't feel bad about hitting this. But
Happy to hear that you're doing better.
yeah, it's one of those things where like if I can't throw myself out of whack too much, you know.
Yeah.
I
And
got epilepsy, so I
Here's-
can kind of relate, I guess.
And here's kind of like an off tangent. We don't need to stick on too much, but what do you know about permaculture?
So I've heard of it, and I should know what it is, and I'm gonna admit that I don't.
That's fine. I just feel like that's kind of like the perfect like through line between being like an agriculturalist and being like a landscape artist is like being able to, because what made me think about it was you talking about how your backyard is so small and like what are you supposed to do with that space, but like there are, depending on your understanding of ecosystems and like the natural ecosystems of wherever you live, you can choose like a bunch of plants to just plant in certain strategic areas and do the land in certain, set it up in certain ways to make it so that everything is just kind of like self-sustaining
Oh, yeah.
and harvestable. You know, so
Yeah.
you just got like food and all this other stuff just kind of like taking care of itself through natural processes, as opposed to something that you have to like,
Maintain.
you know, hire a group of, you know, individuals to like chop and maintain to like for however often.
Like a damn golf course.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. You know,
Like I would really like to be a homeowner, you know, if the stars align that way, because bro, my yard would go insanely hard. I would have my shit
My
looking
yard
nice.
would go insanely hard. That's
That's
a
true.
bar.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's probably why these boomers don't want us owning homes, because they know that the first thing to go are the nice cut lawns.
Oh hell
Right?
yeah!
That's just gonna be
putting carrots
rocks and dirt.
Carrots.
Yeah, I'm gonna start. I'm planting crops, bro.
I want clover. I want.
Give me my
some
mossy
clover.
rocks.
I just want onions. Some red onions.
Yes,
That works.
That would
Mossy
be
rocks,
fire,
some
yeah.
green onions. That's a lawn right there.
My yard would look like Minecraft, bro. I
Yeah.
have my wheat.
Look
my
like a
carrots, my
tiger
potatoes.
You
biome.
got your cows over
The cows are over there and a fence.
Yeah.
There's like 18 of them in a 3x3 fence.
I
There's like a
squid in
pit
the
that they
pond.
fall into that it kills them, farms them.
My iron farm's over there. Yeah. Got my infinite water source.
The infinite bucket of water.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
Yeah.
okay, my mind just went like 3 different places and I was trying to decide which way to go.
Which play Minecraft?
Sorry.
No,
All right,
You,
next topic.
you
I
moved
was-
Never played Minecraft?
I was not allowed computer access until I was 16,
Okay.
and
You
then
still haven't played Minecraft?
I just didn't get into it. I'm a busy lady.
Now you're better off.
Now, I would say if you weren't already doing it in the real world, that would be a good outlet for doing some of those things. Or
That's what I'm saying. You're
or
better
a
off.
3D space
It's too
to,
good of an outlet
to
for it.
plan, you know? You know what I mean? Like if you wanted to plan something that was big and have a visual idea of it before doing it physically.
Or if you
Yeah,
just
if you
wanted
wanted
to
to,
let
like-
your mind run wild.
Yeah.
If you needed a stage where you're going to have your iron farm and the portal to the nether, like in kind of in a controlled environment where you're not investing, you know,
There
not
you
as much
go.
upfront investment.
Yeah. No, but one of the 3 directions that my mind was going was, you know, architecture and like and landscaping and all those things, and it's always been very fascinating to me, but never something that I delved into because I have an appreciation for like you described, like the the experience, the vibe that is being set by
Yeah.
a location, a place, a thing that's built.
I mean,
Because
if
it's a lot of decisions have to be made. Go into like building a building is not just, it's not a naturally occurring thing that just comes out of the ground. There's so many decisions that have to be made that add up to culminate into this is like the experience is this.
So if you think of event production as planting a garden, it lines up. Like you're deciding the texture of the sound, you're deciding the colors that are surrounding it, you're deciding what plants or people you want where they would be most harmonic. You're deciding where you're gonna your irrigation lines or your chords. Your hardscape is this. Like it's such a transferable idea. I guess the idea is really just harmony, and you can apply it to really any art. It's creating something and creating an environment. Like when you create an event stage, you're not just throwing a couple things up there and praying. It's creating an environment. When they walk in, what is the first thing that they're going to see? Where is the first place that they're going to want to go? Who
The
is the
art of
first
curation.
person they want to talk to? Like that is the idea behind it. Is it's not just a table, it's a table with things on it that make more things happen. It's harmony.
What's your take or opinion
Rest in
on
peace, Harmony Lounge.
intentional
Rest in peace, Harmony Lounge.
Would you marry the Eiffel Tower?
No.
what's your opinion or take on intentional, one might say artistic disharmony or disruption?
I like
And
jazz.
I think you would have a
I like
take on
jazz.
that.
Is that what you said?
Well, okay,
That's
that's a
funny.
good answer actually.
I like jazz.
I
As
felt
valid
like
an answer as
I
any.
was kind of
What
thinking
about
of
in
you
the
when I was
physical
asking that
form?
question.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So in the physical form,
Not you as a person, but
No, I
like
know.
you in like music space.
Yeah. Yeah.
when I envision what disharmony would look like in a physical form, that'd be like you have a soft scape of moss and then you have a hard rock coming out at a sharp angle. I feel like disharmony is kind of harmonic. Like it depends on how you do it. Like there's things that make it work.
There's beauty in the chaos.
I like in clothing. This is kind of a poor outfit right now, but I like mixing masculine and feminine elements together because I feel like it's a really nice combination. Like when I was out before, I had this unbuttoned, and I figured maybe not on camera, but I have like this nice little lace thing on, and then these are my little brother's shorts that he left before he moved to Orlando. Like I like mixing different things that, they're the same muted colors, so it works. But this is like very feminine and this is my brother was probably doing insane things in these shorts. Probably crashed his motorcycle wearing these or
Insane
something.
things. in these
Insane
shorts.
things in these shorts.
That's the title. That's gonna be the title of this
This is
episode.
insane things in these.
Insane things in these shorts.
That's the title.
That's the title for
Insane.
It's funny because the concept of pants and shorts are 100 years ago would be a strictly masculine thing.
Yeah, it's nice.
So you have a brother, you
I
have a
do.
mom, you have a dad.
Yep.
Do you have grandparents?
I have 3 surviving.
That's cool.
Strong.
I
What
have
about
3
great
surviving too.
grandparents?
I had those at one point.
Yeah, same.
I never had those.
Not that great, apparently. They'll
Not
still be
that great.
around. I'm just
Oh my
kidding.
God.
Just kidding.
They were so great.
Yeah,
They
they'd
would still be on the
here.
leaderboard.
Yes.
My last
They've been through
surviving great grandparent died 4 years ago now.
life.
So
They survived life.
Are all 3 of your your grandparents, all 3 of them in America, or
No, one of them is. 2 of them are living in Mexico.
you ever visit?
Yes, I haven't visited in a while, but we used to go like once or twice a year, and we'd stay for like a month or 2 at a time. And I should probably go back, but my job is like the county sucks. They give you 4 hours of paid time off every 2 weeks.
4 hours of paid
4
time off.
hours. And if you take time off and it's not PTO, it's going to be FMLA, which is family medical leave, because you or someone in your family is like fucked completely and you can't come to work and you just won't get paid and they might give your job to somebody else.
They might
4
give
hours
your
every 2
job
weeks
to
is
someone
pretty good
else.
compared to my
That's
last
so
job.
nice of them.
I mean, to me, it's like, bro, like I got stuff I want to do. Like I have things that I want to do that
You
I
have
need
a
time off
life.
for.
What countries have you seen?
I have seen two, which is Mexico and America.
What are some things that are interesting to you about Mexico? About
Tell us about
The
the
dichotomy
culture
between the
and
two.
the
yeah,
heritage.
dichotomy between the two, or in multiple senses, like not just like culturally, but it could be like about the like, you know,
So
it could be about the architecture of like, things are like different,
I'm
there's so many things, but you know what I mean.
the first thing that came to mind was advertising.
Okay.
Advertising.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I
and
remember Mexican advertisements on the cruise, and I don't know why, but they're funnier.
it,
They're better.
it's it's not just how frequent they are or the colors that they for some reason chose that are completely unaesthetic. It is the fact that on every single ad that I've ever seen in Mexico, it was always, always, always a white person.
Yep.
Even in the most rural areas where there is not a white person to be found, they're looking at me like I'm a ghost. It will be a white person on that ad, and that is the result of glorification and colonialism. And so when I come back to America and I see, people talking about, X, Y, and Z, there is such a focus now, even with people and companies moving away from DEI. There is still so much diversity in our advertisements when you look at a predominantly POC country like Mexico, that it's kind of, it shakes your shit up a little bit. Like,
I
to
believe
go
that.
down there and see a bunch of people holding white people as the pinnacle when the white people are a severe minority. Like, they're obviously, you can have Latino in any color, but white people are a genuine minority.
Yeah, I had never heard about this
It
phenomenon
is
before,
all
so that's very
have you
fascinating.
been? You've seen it's a bunch of white people, bro.
So it's because the best way I can put it is a lot of Hispanic
It's colorism.
cultures, they hold like being white as holiness, I suppose, in their
Yeah.
mind. And so
It's like the
and
lighter you are,
the lighter you are, the
closer
better.
to God you are.
Yeah, and so
You're good if you're white. If you're white,
there's-
you're innately good.
there's like a sect of Hispanics that are black, like
Puerto Ricans.
well, not even just Puerto Ricans, but because slavery was taken like all throughout the Caribbean, there is a sect of them that are black and refuse to be black. They're just Hispanic. They don't consider themselves black. And then there's also a sect of Hispanics that are they are willing to sell their heritage to be white.
Like,
And-
skin bleaching is incredibly common.
Yes.
But that
I've had-
also definitely goes both
I've
ways.
had
Well,
my skin bleached
and that's
against
not to
my
make
will
up
at
the
the
For better
time.
or
whole
for worse.
I actually
Hispanic
want
community.
I
I'm
want to
just
comment
saying,
on
but-
that just a little bit, because I don't know if there's any legal repercussions for me talking about this. I hope not. We'll find out.
If anything,
I-
mute it.
I did. I'll just bleep it out. I worked a job doing content moderation for a little bit, and one of the very specific things we had to moderate was about skin whitening creams and ointments and things that are marketed to dark skinned individuals to make them lighter.
Yeah.
And the way we had to moderate it was very specific, because it wasn't about the product, it was about the way they were marketing it. Basically, like, it was certain terminology. I can't remember all of it right now because it's a few years back, but there was certain terminology, and like there was and things like, if you're marketing it as a way to whiten skin, then it was like
Skin brightening.
skin brightening.
Mhm.
My mom used that stuff on me when I was younger.
Wow.
What? Really?
When I tell you that I
And-
grew up under slightly bizarre circumstances, I'm not kidding.
In my specific scenario, most of the time this was like Indian cultures and people, and there's probably others too, but I think it was predominantly like Indian cultures that had this like obsession with this thing, at least from like my pool that I was like involved with. It was very heavily
So it's not even just Hispanic cultures that believe white is holy. Indian cultures too. It's just like I think it's like kind of like a world belief. I don't know where it kind of stems from or why.
Colonialism.
I don't know if it's even colonialism because I don't know if there was
That's
much
probably part of it.
colonialism in India, at least.
Yes, there was.
The
The
were-
British.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
that
the
was
East
a
India
huge
Company
thing.
was like the
I
whole,
forgot
yeah.
the British were over there. That's true. So yeah,
Name
it
a
probably
place
was.
on the
they
map.
were out
Yeah,
there. They
probably.
were,
Name a place on the map.
yeah,
The
they were
British are
riding
probably
the
there.
giant ants out there in
So-
India.
Yeah.
It all does stem back to colonialism, I guess. Then,
But I think you're partially.
What is the skin of Adam and Eve? In your minds, when you go back to Adam and Eve, how do you visualize them sitting in the Garden of Eden? What color are they? What tones are they?
Purple.
I don't picture them. I don't believe in them or the Garden of Eden.
I think you're both right because I think it was partially like trade and colonialism, but I think for it to have been such a strongly like kept thing, it might have also stemmed from somewhere else also, because I feel like if it was only the colonialism part, at some point it probably would have faded away. I could be wrong, but that's my initial.
It depends
reaction.
on what the cultural and religious beliefs of the invaded country was, right? So some cultures will be very strongly rejecting of it, or there will be cultures that are accepting of it. Like if you come from a culture that believes something that's kind of like Christianity, you're expecting someone to come, a god, to come, maybe on a great ship, kind of like exactly what the Mayan, Aztec, etc. culture was.
Yeah.
Like that was a prime setup for these motherfuckers to come, and they were welcomed, and that it depends on your culture, like if you're from a culture where it's like they're coming and they will kill you and they'll be awful, then you're not going to be accepting of the white man.
I wonder if I have a small point. I'll let you go. I just have a quick thing.
Sure.
I wonder if certain cultures were more susceptible to incorporating that into their thing if they were cultures that were heavily based on class, like caste systems, because the whole whiteness thing being kind of a like a thing you're
Yeah.
trying to achieve because it makes you look better, makes you look closer to God, makes you look whatever perceived better. I wonder if cultures like India who have that caste.
Well, I mean,
Paradigm.
hierarchy is ubiquitous throughout all cultures.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
it's just a matter of what separates
So,
and distinguishes that
What I was
hierarchy.
going to say
true.
is in Japan, I know they're xenophobic in general, but they tend to be more open and welcoming to white people because their skin tone and
it's closer to theirs. Maybe.
yeah, it's closer to theirs. And like I had a friend who moved to South Korea, to teach kids English, and she told me that like she's black, nobody wants to date a black person in Korea.
Really.
Yeah, so that was just like all she could make is
I-
some friends, but then there were like also still would make comments on her skin and stuff like that because she's out of like there's no one else like her apparently.
Fish out of
there.
water
Yeah, fish
kinda
out of
thing,
water.
yeah.
And so she stayed there for like 5 years, I think.
Did things
teaching.
change at all? For her?
No,
Stayed the same
she
level?
never found someone that was willing to date a black person there. And I also was seeing like a video, and a lot of Asian girls, at least, they don't date a black guy unless they're light skinned. At least over on that side of the water, not necessarily here in
I
America.
believe that human beings psychologically, because they associate the light with white and light with good, they have that psychological association. And because sometimes the night and the dark brings fear and brings doubt sometimes in the beginning stages of psychology of the human being.
I feel as though to try to sum up the question, morality and light and dark do I feel play a role. We see light as good and dark as bad, but I don't think light or dark are inherently
I think that's an interpretation
bad
that
or
really only
good.
makes sense in hindsight.
like we kind of
because
both are needed.
As human beings today, that is not
Yes.
the
This case.
definition of what the original creation of it was.
Yeah, but even to the extent that it is that like good and evil exists in white and black cultures, and to the extent that they
Yeah.
are
Well,
one or
and-
the other, it's just the fact that the white people at the time had the power to assert their whatever on the black people,
Also-
that kind of drew that correlation. Because if it was the other way around,
History is
humans
written
would
by the
still prefer the
victors,
light to the darkness,
ultimately.
and that would still have its significance. But
We're
it would
also
just be-
getting into the territory of like color theory stuff again, because different cultures perceive and understand and associate colors very differently from each
Mhm.
other.
It-
So I don't think the whole white being good and dark being bad is ubiquitous.
You also
Exactly.
see, in cultures that are like pre-colonialism or that have managed to avoid that, they still have a basis for morality. They still are able to judge if something's good and bad. It doesn't matter, that there's no white people around for them to base it off of. And I think that is very significant because once you introduce white people, you're also introducing their belief system. You don't ever just have a body. You have the body and the mind that comes with it. And so when this person who's already entering the scene with a sense of entitlement and betterness, they're going to pass that along. And I think a lot of the times it gets adopted as a survival mechanism. You have a mom telling her kid, go along with it because I want you to be okay. You'll survive if you do what they say. And then the kid takes that and then it passes down through generations until you're in modern time and you have cultures where it's like, okay, being white just means that you're better.
Just to go back to what the narrator said, I do think what she was more so meaning is not necessarily I don't want to say color theory. I imagine when the first white people saw the first black people over in Africa, they were like,
Damn, they're different.
what the fuck?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
it's more so the contrast.
it was probably
in general.
just
Yeah.
shock, and people don't like different. It's scary to them.
Fear of
and
different, yeah.
so until they became comfortable with them, which took a long time because they chose to use them as slaves instead of trying to like broker a relationship, it just created more adversity between both sides. And obviously, that adversity continues on throughout history in the ways and the scars that all of that left. It's like, what the hell is it called? Something trauma, generational trauma. And it just continues on because hurt people. And it's hard to find that peace that was already for so long like off the table and get a good balance.
Mhm.
So I feel like in a way they did see black people and were like, obviously they're evil, like look at that guy, he doesn't look like me, definitely evil. And so that
But
kind
it might
of
not because specifically darkness, but of skin, but because
Just
difference.
the difference in
difference.
contrast.
And
yeah.
then
High contrast
they go and
difference.
tell their people, yo, those guys evil, treat them like dogs. Okay. And that's how it goes.
Yeah.
A
Perhaps.
little color association, though, I think sometimes, because a little bit like when we think about heaven and hell, we think of white, we think of the sky, and then the sky is white, and then we think of angels.
I mean, that's probably. I think that's only probably relevant at a certain IQ threshold.
Well, I think it's also
I think the color
To where
aspect,
like that correlation is like a serious thing that
Yeah, I
most
think-
people are using. To,
I think the color association thing is more like a retroactive. It came later, and we retroactively applied it.
But-
I think
Because
that's
you-
also super cultural. I mean, like if you grew up in America, sure, because this is a mostly religious country, even it doesn't matter whether or not people are atheists or not, it's still a very religious country. But if you were to ask someone in the Democratic Republic of Congo, what color is good, it might be green.
Also,
Yeah.
it's more so than that. It's just the Western versus Eastern values as well, because the Eastern, obviously, everybody knows the yin yang. These diametric forces are ultimately one thing, just kind of like functioning in and of each other. And so it's like that approach. If you adopt that interpretation of good and evil, then the racial color theory is like literally completely irrelevant, or It
I mean,
erases racism.
even considering heaven as good is a predominantly white belief. You know, like if you're raised in uh, another country in Africa where God and Christianity is not, that's like some niche thing that you'd have to like research and study to get an understanding of. And your main belief system is based off of gods related to the earth and things around you, brown or green or blue, all of the life sustaining things. Those might be the colors that you associate with any kind of goodness or morality.
We talked about in orthodoxy too, red is significant, of course, as a color that can mean that, you know, painting Easter eggs, red is the significance of life and of death because it represents so many things. And then, of course, as a society, we sometimes when we see red, it has a power. There's a power to it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's
like I said, sometimes with color associations, even just going back to religious essence, where did that come from? It came from the color of our blood. It comes from like, where does that come from? Well,
Because then you're getting into evolutionary theory,
of spiritualism,
evolutionary psychology.
you know, looking at our outsides on the insides on the outside of us, that's pretty that's an existential experience.
yeah. I mean, it depends on who you're giving the Easter eggs to that they would think of the blood of Christ. It depends on who's seeing the McDonald's sign that they would think of food instead of war and blood and anger. You know, it depends so much on who's seeing it.
And heaven isn't uh in every religion.
Not at
Isn't
all.
in
Judaism.
in Judaism they
We
don't believe in hell, right?
well, we don't. It's not necessarily a matter of belief. It's a matter of focus
Hmm.
and what's important.
And that's what's here now.
Right. Many and I can't fully speak on this because I like to say that I'm fake Jewish because my family kind of converted from Christianity to
Judaism.
a messianic Jewish.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like basically you take Jewish tradition and laws, but then still believe that Christ was the savior that was foretold. So it's kind of a
It's a
joining of the
mix
two things.
both.
And so, but one of the big things with Judaism is they don't really. My understanding is that it's not that they don't believe in heaven and hell. It's just that that's not important right now. That's important later when you die and go there. What's important now is your impact on the world and the people around you.
From my understanding, Judaism, they don't believe in like you die and you go to a place, but it's not heaven or hell. It's kind of
It's
like
Abraham's bosom.
yeah,
Is that correct?
I don't.
That sounds like an Islam thing. I'm not sure if that's also a Jewish thing.
And
I don't know that deeply enough to comment on that part
in
specifically.
Buddhism, you want to reach nirvana, which is a state of self. And until you reach that, you just keep reincarnating until you've reached that state, and then you're just done forever. I don't fully believe in reincarnation or Buddhism. I don't adhere to any single religion. I do feel as though we are all in a cycle, and you can find one person in another person. You can meet another person and be like, I've met you before, and we've gone through this circle before. And in a sense, to me, whenever that happens, it feels as though I didn't finish whatever I was meant to complete with that last person, if that makes sense.
I completely get what you mean. I don't know. I don't really have an established belief for or against reincarnation. However, I do relate to the feeling that some people express when they meet someone and they think, like, this is your first time being here. Very obviously, this is your first time being on this planet.
Mm.
And then other people, it's like, I feel like you've been here before. Not
I feel
because I
like-
recognize you, but I feel like there's some aspect inside you that's done this already.
Mm.
You know?
Like you have some kind of wisdom or something.
Yeah. And that could go back to what we were talking about way early in the beginning of just way people are brought up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't have the answers. I have a lot of
None of us
questions.
have
though.
the answers,
Got a
Well,
lot
on
of
this,
questions.
but we
well,
all
on the
have
topic,
questions.
what a perfect, what more of a
We gotta go
perfect
something
segue
else.
into the discussion of the unknown cryptids, ghosts, and other
Hell yeah.
such, spooky
The Loch Ness
extraterrestrial
Monster?
and or supernatural experiences that you may have had.
Um,
Our iconic closing segment.
I
Have you ever tried a Ouija board and what happened?
I have not tried a Ouija board.
I
I
wouldn't.
really only had one
I don't believe in ghosts. I'm
experience.
not fucking with no Ouija board still.
I was very young and I was like chilling. We were at St. Augustine's. And
That's spooky town.
yeah, I remember just going in. I was a wishy-washy kid. I was very emotional. So remember going in there and I remember, my mom was like walking around or whatever. I don't know where my brother and dad are. And I remember I just go into one of the prison cells and
Prison cells? What?
they have like the places where they'd keep people. It's a prison cell.
In St. Augustine?
Yeah,
what you're talking
it's a
about.
I don't know.
fortress.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know what you're talking
I
about.
didn't know that this was a thing.
And I remember going in and sitting down and I felt like I was gonna cry. Like it just felt like I could feel like everything that ever happened in there and I just felt so awful for everybody. It's not necessarily supernatural, but I felt really
You
connected
felt
with
like the
everybody.
dread, the energy.
Yeah, I just felt like this was like so bad and just a general feeling of evilness and regret for everybody that was there.
Have you ever been to the Deviltree?
I have. I don't believe that. I went there at midnight. I wanted to see something happen. Nothing happened.
I've been there, and I don't believe that the Deviltree that's there is the Deviltree, but I will say,
No, that's a scandalous take.
I will
That's
say that I
yeah, right, hot take.
walked to the left of the Deviltree, and I went through some like small little path, and it led me to this single tree that was just in this field. Everything was there was no other trees around it. Like every other tree was kind of like more distant, and there's just this one tree, and there's a bunch of leaves on the floor. And for some reason, when I entered that area, it it was like I don't know, like the pressure of everything changed. It felt like my hairs
through a
were
portal.
standing on my neck.
The Bleach
That
spiritual
felt
pressure
like
music
the real
started playing.
Deviltree.
You went through a portal.
So you won't mess with the Ouija boards, but you'll track down and try to find a double
I wasn't
tree.
tracking down anything. I was just walking around, and then I walked into that, and I was like, I don't belong here. This is not where I belong, and I left.
My I've said this like a million times on the podcast before, but my kind of belief on like things like demons and spirits and things is I'm not 100% sure they're real. However, I lean towards they are, but I personally feel like we have more power over them than they do of us if we are aware of it.
Whenever I
Kind of like what you were describing
Will.
earlier of like being aware enough to make decisions.
Mhm.
I feel like if you are aware of influences on you spiritually, you have far more control and power over those forces than they do of you.
Yeah, you gotta
When-
have a high enough wisdom modifier to pass the check that causes you to not take psychic
The-
damage.
Yeah.
the wisdom save roll,
Yeah. Gotta
uh,
have enough mana.
I don't see demons as like from hell or anything. I believe heaven and hell are all a mind state. I do think demons are. When I think demons, I think mental illness. I think depression.
Real.
I think
Vices.
yeah, like whatever. It can be different for anyone. Everybody has their own demons, and I feel like people
isn't
were
that why they
saying
call
that.
them? Isn't that why we've called those things demons? It's
But
because
I-
originally demons were a demon of a thing.
Well, I feel
Kind
like
of like
so.
in the same way gods are God of X, God of Y.
I feel like even back then when they were saying like there's demons, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
I think they were talking about the same things we're talking about
Correct.
today, but they didn't have the information on it. And
Right, okay.
so they couldn't correlate it to what we can correlate it to more so. But I think that was what the demons that they were referring to was like the demons that were haunting them, at least in my opinion. And then when they speak of angels, uh
I think them shits are aliens,
I think angels.
interdimensional aliens.
You know, we had drugs back then too.
Yeah.
Shrooms
Hell yeah.
existed back then. And
I
stuff,
think both
so
could be true.
I think it could. No one knows. None of us know. We weren't there unless we were there and got reincarnated and forgot.
Yeah, right.
But it doesn't help still. So none of us really know at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think demons are just mental illness.
Mhm.
That's how I see them anyway. When I speak of demons, I'm talking about mental illness.
Your experience with St. Augustine, was that your only experience of that kind, of that nature?
Yeah, I was raised to believe that demons are very real. My mom tried to do an exorcism on me. My mom did an exorcism on my grandpa
Oh,
when he
wow.
was dying of cancer. And I think that it's ultimately just the worst coping mechanism that you could have. I think that what she did was psychological torture. I don't think it was abuse. I think it was torture. And so for me, it's like I can't even take it seriously anymore. I mean, the people that I have encountered in my life have been light years more cruel than any non-tangible thing could be. You know, I don't think that I feel like a belief in demons is just shows that you haven't seen enough cruelty. You know, it's kind of harsh, but like that's my take. I've like seen so many horrible, horrible things happen to people. Um, and it's just like,
Do you feel your mom suffers from some kind of?
for sure, she absolutely does. But she refuses to get it diagnosed, and I've hit a point where it's like she's done so many different things, and I can speak about each of them in a lighthearted manner. But when you kind of start to put the whole picture together, like my life really did get better when I graduated high school, you know, and that's for a lot of different reasons. And I think that I would not be the person I am today without it. But I'm not going to overextend myself in gratitude trying to help her. You know, that's her thing to deal
That
with.
isn't your
You
responsibility.
can't help someone who's not open to letting you help
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
I-
Can't help somebody who isn't willing to help themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
The big lesson.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
we can probably wrap it up there.
hmm Weird note to
been-
wrap it up on, but fantastic episode.
Very
Yeah.
good.
That was definitely one of the more like interesting
top
ones that we've
tier,
had.
top
Yeah.
3 episodes.
This was fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. I
Yes.
think, I think we need like a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4 with you.
We're definitely doing a
'Cause-
follow up once you've gotten some more, events under your belt and
Oh.
people know about you, and we can put your name on it. It'll actually boost our numbers.
Do you have anything whatsoever going on to plug to people?
Yes. Okay.
Anything and everything.
On May 17th of this year, we are going to be having our first rock-themed event at Cobbcat.
Ooh.
It is going to be a lot of fun. You heard a little bit about my process and how I see things, so you can trust it'll be a good one. And there will be more coming. I have an event page, 404soundnotfound on Instagram. My personal account is 404lilinotfound. I post updates on both about different art and music and collaborations that I do. And yeah,
All right.
check it out.
This mic or this camera, that camera. Tell the folks what you. No, I'm kidding.
All right, Sean Evans.
Sean Evans.
Get out of here. Chill hot sauce. No, thank you so much for coming.
And thank you
It's
for
been
having
awesome.
me.
There'll be links for everything else. Follow Ghost in the Ox and
Subscribe to our Patreon.
give us money. That'd be,
Please.
that'd be kind of cool.
Make hentai.
Send us your hentai of us.
your
That thing
hentai.
costs more than $3 a month, believe it or not.
It is with the Rule 34
Actually, I
special.
just finished paying it off.
Not Lily.
Well, not
Lily out
anymore,
of
but
it.
it did. It did for a while.
It cost approximately $162 a month until I paid it off. Now it costs electricity.
Bro, $159 worth of subs is not an impossible goal. Come on,
Yeah.
y'all are slacking.
Thanks to Almond for joining us in the second half there.
Thank
your
you for
links and
having
things
me.
will be there. Check him out.
I'm
Follow
here.
him. Follow and support Trey in whatever way he deems you worthy of.
Good luck.
He doesn't deem me worthy.
And thank you again to Nicole, aka the narrator, for letting us use her space and for chiming in Mikeless numerous times. That was epic.
Have fun, Edit Evan. For
Have fun, future
subtitling that
me
shit.
editing this.
Have
No
fun me
subtitles. No,
finding
you're-
clips later.
You're just gonna
Yeah.
just super boost the audio, so it's just like
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of noise. All right.
even better.
Peace.
Peace.
Goodbye.